Okay, well, welcome everybody, both in Paris and around the world. I was going to say we were do a quick round of introductions until I discovered that there are 45 people online. I don't want to treat those who have made the trip to Paris and those who are online differentially. So I think we won't have a round of introductions, but I would ask the Secretariat when they are making their presentations just to introduce themselves and which part of the IA they're in, EDC, which section they're with. As you know, we have relatively high turnover, so a lot of the faces from our side of the table are new, although I don't like the fact that it's our side of the table. Next time, maybe we can mix up the delegates and the Secretariat a little better. It looks a little strange to have us as sort of a firing squad set up here. And actually, you're the firing squad. I think more accurately, you're our paymasters, so you're the firing squad, and we are the helpless victims here. In any event, as you know, we've switched the agenda in part just because of the timing. So we're going to start, which I'm not all that comfortable with because I prefer to hear from the countries first. But we're going to start with some Secretariat presentations, some recent developments in our work. But before doing so, I just wanted to say a few things about some recent developments, and my apologies to my team. I scribbled this down just now, and I, of course, will not mention everything, but I'll mention a few things, and then over the course of lunch, dinner, whatever, we can talk about some of the other developments. The first thing is you know, and certainly Marek knows very well, but all of you know very well, have a new questionnaire for the first time in I don't know how many years, which we're piloting, the hydrogen questionnaire, of course. It's not very useful to pilot something if we don't get some input to that. So this is a plea to all of you to try and respond to the new questionnaire. Give us some data to work with, see how it could be improved or changed. And so I wanted to thank not just my team, but all those involved, including, of course, Eurostat in the development of the new questionnaire. Somebody remind me how many years it is since we've had one?
15, the renewables questionnaire.
15. Yeah. Exactly. So with the pace of hopefully the pace of the clean energy transition, it may not be the last one, it might not be 15 more years before we see another one. But I just wanted to mention that. The other thing which came out yesterday is the climate hazard exposure tracker. We have now Alex, others. Alex is online. Why don't you send a chat through the chat, the links to the commentary and to the site. We think this is an important contribution and outcome, an additional development of the Weather for Energy tracker, and something that we think will be extremely useful for people doing empirical work in the area. We've also done a lot of work recently on demand for skills related to the clean energy transition. And we'll be doing more work in that area. There is a commentary that came out a little while ago, a couple of months ago. I'll be sending a link for that as well. That one was on cybersecurity, but it's the first one that we will, cybersecurity in the power sector. But going forward, we'll be doing different skills, different occupations, sort of a leading indicator of demand for skills in the energy sector. Exploiting a lot of new data sources, and I'm very pleased to see that there will be a session on administrative data. I think that's tomorrow, is it? Tomorrow. That's just one example, and I know that's something that all of us are thinking about. We recognize the fact that all of you are overworked, constrained with respect to resources, and so we're thinking of other ways that we can develop data and indicators that does not rely upon us saying we've got a problem. Well, let's reach out to all of you and ask you the answer to whatever that question might be, because we know that you're not in a position to do so. And so we're trying to think how we can inform policymakers in new ways, drawing upon new data sources with all the appropriate caveats. A general point on the modernization, we mentioned this last time and the time before, we're moving away from our bespoke data management system and our bespoke, well, not quite bespoke, but we were the last, in fact, client of our data dissemination tool beyond 2020, for which we received God knows how many complaints. We're moving away from both of those, and I'm happy to say that that for the new annual cycle, and Aidan is sitting here, the entire cycle will be done on Python-based coding. We will be duplicating the process using the old system inquiry, just to ensure that there aren't any problems with respect to the coding that we've implemented, and that is actually being taken up across EDC as a whole in all of the different areas, and we've made a great deal of progress in that. But I put a great deal of pressure on Aidan's team to get this cycle based entirely on the Python coding, because if we miss this year, then it's another year, unlike some of the other parts of EDC. Those are some of the main points that I just wanted to mention, but you're about to get a whole bunch of presentations and other work, and of course there have been lots of other developments in EDC, and as I mentioned at lunch, we're happy to share that with you. As you can see, staff is here. We might not have enough lunch for everybody, but we certainly will have the opportunity to chat with you. Okay. So without further ado, unless somebody wanted to raise any questions right at the outset, I think we can jump into the presentations. Starting off, I think with Susie. Is that right? We have until 12:30, so asking staff to be flexible in the event that we look like we're not going to meet the time. Susie.
Thank you, Nick. I'm actually going to do the first two presentations. Yeah, I'm going to start by talking about work that's ongoing, where we are trying to update the energy RD&D classification. So probably, I would say most of you might not be very familiar with this database that we have. So first, I'm just going to start by explaining why we collect this data. So it's for us, it's to like design, evaluate, and adjust public innovation policies, identify gaps that could be in national policies, evaluate like effectiveness of programs and so on, and also help the private sector define their own strategy in terms of RD&D. So we have this database that covers, so the name is Energy Technology Public RD&D Budgets. So what's in there? It's data on research, development, and demonstration budgets that are funded both by national governments and state and enterprise. This data starts from 1974 and it goes until present day. So for some country, we have even have data for 2023. We publish this twice a year. The last update was on October 14th, and usually so we have a first release with the date country that we received in May, and then the final release in October. It covers a lot of technology that we'll go through that a bit later because this will be a main topic of the presentation. Just as a reminder, last ESDG, I did a presentation on the roadmap. But as a reminder, we have this roadmap to tracking those data, so public energy RD&D budgets. It's a project that we did over like 2021 and 2022, and the roadmap was released in September last year. It described the variety of country approaches to collect this data. So we talked with national administration from 20 countries and also the European Commission, where they explained to us how they collect this data. So we're very thankful for them, of course. And this roadmap is intended as a guide. So for both countries that start collecting this kind of data to see how they can set up their own data collection system, but also for countries that have more advanced systems and and want to strengthen some of their area. So the main topic of this presentation is that we have a technology classification in the database which covers 7 main groups. So we have energy efficiency, fossil fuel, renewables, nuclear, hydrogen and fuel cells, other power and storage technology, and also other more cross-cutting research. Then we have 3 levels of disaggregation. Under this, I'm obviously not going to go through all of it, but for example, under renewables, we'll have like solar, wind, and so on. And under solar, we'll have solar PV, solar thermal, and so on. So it goes really into great details. And from, I would say, for most of the data we receive, for a lot of countries, we do receive very disaggregated data. So it's we're very thankful for those countries. So this technology classification has last been updated in 2011. And so we have also this manual, let's say, guide to reporting energy agenda budget expenditure statistics. So it's not like a roadmap. It's not like the roadmap which talks about how to collect this data. Here is going through like the methodology, so the coverage. We describe like what is energy RD&D, what are like public budget, public expenditure, what the difference is, what should be collected, what should be included or not in the data. And a great part of this manual is also describing the technologies that we include in the data. So define examples and like descriptions of each of the technologies. So those two, like the classification and the manual, are the topic of the conversation here, because we've noticed some like issues with the classification and the manual, as in that it might not be the most up to date and might not reflect the current innovation landscape. So we've identified through several work streams. So it's been mapping with other classifications or discussion with people using our data, so analysts and data users, that there might be some consideration that we want to take into account, and maybe like revise this classification. So the type of potential like consideration that we think might improve the tracking of those data would be, for example, addition of technologies that are not currently tracked. For example, like critical minerals for energy is not, R&D is not tracked in there. Industrial electrification. We also don't have specific mention of recycling for like batteries, for example. So all R&D on that is not in the classification currently. We also have current disaggregation that might not be very useful anymore. It could be that for now we split R&D on EV batteries and stationary batteries, but is it relevant? Because most of the research is done on batteries and not necessarily with the end use in mind. We also have further disaggregation that we think would be very helpful. A good example is that under our energy efficiency transport categories, we have off-road transport, but a lot of the R&D today is done like on aviation, like rail shipping separately, and a lot of people would be interested in like having those separated. So this could be important information. And also we have some of the categories that we might want to reorganize. For example, today CCS is only under fossil fuels, and we know that it's much larger than that currently. So we might want to move this around. So this is also like our objectives are main objectives that we would really like to have a classification that reflects better the current innovation landscape. But we also have in mind that we want the data quality to stay like the same. So we want to like, of course, like secure the agreement of data provider that they can still collect this data, even if we change the classification. And if they tell us that that's not possible, we're not going to change everything, even if the classification is perfect at the end, if the countries can't follow with that. And we also want to ensure that the time series will be like conserved, and that we can still compare like data between the years before a potential date and after. We also want, like, might not be like, it's also not like the most priority, but better align like all of the classification that we have within the IEA, also with the other like national and international classification system. And our last objective is that the manual will be, of course, updated to reflect those potential updated classifications, but also we also want to improve like the description and definitions that are in there. In terms of timeline, we've started this work already in 2021, 2022. We've been mapping with other energy innovation classification. This is where we started noticing some of the issues that I've listed. So we have like this list since beginning of 2023. We've been consulting with the data providers and with the technology expert and RD&D expert on what they think about the classification, where they see potential improvement. And over the next year, we'll be trying to list all of those issues, list all of this feedback, make sense of them, like classify them according to, is it like really a priority? Is it feasible? And does it require maybe just an update of the manual with some clarification, or an actual update of the classification itself? So we'll compile all of this. We'll go, of course, to countries to make sure like they would agree with this, and update the manual. So this is a work we'll want to do over 2024. So this is me on this topic specifically. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Very good presentation, thank you. We have started this work in Sweden because, as everyone knows, we are very decentralized in our authorities in Sweden. And we have found that this should start, this is a tip, start with the National Statistical Institute, because there is a Frascati manual discussing in OECD countries. And that manual should be the cornerstone for developing 7 indicators for EIA. We have started this with Statistics Sweden because they are the main provider in the OECD for Sweden. And there you can see that we have done a pilot study in the enterprise sector and have a 90% response rate of the 7 indicators according to energy indicators for energy research and development. This is the way to do the baseline of data, because otherwise this research budget survey is also coming from a part of the OECD, but this is very, very differently defined in every country. That we have already seen. So have a discussion with OECD and fix it for everyone. Thank you. Otherwise, I totally support you.
Thanks, Niklas. We have, so I think in terms of this data collection, I think we're working from your colleagues from the Swedish Energy Agency, if I'm not mistaken. So it tends to be, and for a lot of most countries, I would say, it tends to be parallel data collection, the one for the OECD and the one for us, because we tend to work with more energy agencies or Minister of Energies and so on.
But we are talking with the expert at Statistics Sweden and OECD in the European system that are the providers for Eurostat in research and development, are talking about how to define what is research and development from the university, because they are not technologically supported in all subjects in the university. This is the main issue to get this in the perfect way. Thank you.
No, maybe I think you are correct, and we have discussed a lot with the OECD colleagues of Science STI. The Frascati manual is the basis for our manual in terms of definition of the concepts like research and development. So it is. The difference is coming when we are asking about energy technology categories, because that doesn't is not taken into account in the OECD. It's a cross-domain survey there. that doesn't get into the detail on energy research, and then they define the boundaries, their domains also differently, because energy for them is not the same as research in energy technology. So we have been discussing. I'm not sure it can be harmonized fully.
Well, it can, because enterprises are really, in Sweden, are really interesting to say what they're doing in the Green Deal situation. And that's the reason why we had the 90% response rate in the pilot in the OECD going to enterprises for those are talking about how much value and cost they have in the research development to OECD, and they have also answer on our extra questions. So put it on there, the OECD intermittent questionnaires coming every time. Now next is for government and authorities, and we have taken the 7 indicators next time with Sweden again, Statistics Sweden again. And Statistics Sweden have said, we want to have this as the official statistics because this is needed in the change of the energy system.
No, it's a good point. We need to see how it is possible to look at the energy technology research in all the domains of the questionnaires of the OECD.
I can make a presentation next time on this work we are doing.
And I think that it would be very helpful to have a presentation. And of course, the coverage of the OECD, I mean, this is a focus on public RD and D, right? And of course, the Frascati manual is not exclusively about public expenditures. And our definition is different in 2 important ways. One is the inclusion of demonstration, and secondly, the treatment of state-owned enterprises and their expenditures. But I think the points that we're trying to address in this way, and if you look through the kinds of changes that Susie was describing, it was in an effort not to complicate life, but in fact to simplify life for the respondents. And if there are ways which we can do so even further, if we're reaching out to the same community, and that depends entirely upon the country, whether or not it will be, the data will be collected from the same people for something like the Frascati, as would be the case for our exercise, then we're all ears with respect to how that could do. And that involves, of course, collaborating closely with the OECD, which we do. I came from STI before I was at the IEA. And secondly, reaching out to all of you and having contributions from you to say, well, treating this in this manner makes our life somewhat more difficult because we need to tweak the data in this manner, which we didn't have to do in that way. So we would welcome that. And that was the point that we have the consultation, which is coming to an end January 2024. And we would welcome inputs from you with respect to that consultation. But if you would be interested in making a presentation next time, I think that would be extremely welcome. I'll say one other thing just as a final point, because then I'll send that in a link as well. I think it was in October. So separate from the expenditure data, which we are collecting in the context of this exercise, the IEA also has a clean energy projects, demonstration projects database, which I believe was updated in October, and that is actual projects. So I don't think there's any value data in there. It's on the demonstration projects and the identification of demonstration projects and in which areas. Obviously, combining those 2 databases gives some interesting insights. Are there any other questions? Susie, Susie, is there anything else you'd like in response? Okay. Are there any other questions, including online? And if somebody does have a question, I'll ask Mikey and Audrey just to indicate to me. Okay. Great. Okay, so we already have 1 agenda item for November next year. Susie, I think it's still in your court.
Yes. So yeah, as I said, like please feel free to send us any like feedback to this email address as well. We're happy to receive any input from any of you. So This presentation is going to talk about the migration to the EVO platform. So most of you, I think, will be familiar with it already because a lot of data process have been using it. So here I'll be more talking about the process that are still using. So let's say like old system, which is less of a system and more like exchanging Excel files by email. So what we do usually, for example, in the RDND case, we send Excel file once a year, and then the country send it to us through the year. So it's all done by emails. There's a few issues with this. Is that in my opinion, the main one is that more and more like we use macros to do checks and like graphs and so on in those questionnaires, and more like IT systems just block macros, so we can't send the questionnaire, and then we have to send it like without the macros and so on. And it gets and it's more and more countries, and even us like internally, it becomes a problem. Then also in terms of tracking emails by with like Excel files, you tend to lose email, you tend to lose like even the files, if it can always happen to everyone, or it's like not archived properly. So this is a problem. And also that those are Excel questionnaires, but not necessarily everyone has the license, so it can be a problem. So this is why like the EVO platform has been used for a lot of process now. So it's like an online platform where we manage with an EDC like the writing and reading access for the different questionnaires. There's no email exchange if there's no, like in theory, there's of course like exchanges for queries and so on, but to submit the data, it doesn't need to be done by email, and you can just import the data through the CSV file on the platform. I'm not necessarily an expert on this platform yet because we've just started our own transition in the section on energy transition indicators, but we're happy to take questions, of course, on this. So the advantages of EVO compared to exchanging Excel files by email is that for some countries have system in place, so IT system where they do all the data collection and like do it, I don't know, on Python or on their own file, and then they have to put the data in our format in our questionnaire and then send it to us, so it can be an additional step to the process. But in this case, you just have to respect the structure of the database and just send it as a CSV and import it. So it makes it simpler. It's also very good because we have a central platform with like the same process for all the data collection. So it makes it much more streamlined. There's no need to exchange macro Excel files and they are blocked everywhere. It's also possible for countries to download back the data that's been submitted before and see like the history of the data that they submitted. We'll have a presentation by my colleagues after on this Q&A platform, so I won't go into details, but it will be possible to link the EVO platform and this Q&A platform. So this is positive. And we can integrate all the checks that we've done in the questionnaires until now and integrate them in the platform itself. So it makes it easier for countries to just like drop the CSV file, then see like what inconsistencies there might be in the data when they submit it, and see it in a more obvious way than in an Excel file, and the process is like overall faster. So just a quick like current status on all the questionnaires that we have, and if they're like on EVO on still done through Excel. So all the annual fuel questionnaire have been on EVO, and when I say it's on EVO, like I know that it still can be done by email as well. Like it's like a parallel can be done both by email and through the EVO platform. So I think even like for us, there won't be any plans like to like force people into using this platform, is they're much more comfortable with an Excel. Also, most of like the shortened data questionnaire on there. So the MOS oil, MOS gas, monthly electricity, the crude oil import register, and the emergency questionnaire. And then all the questionnaire that we have in our data and indicators for energy transition section, I still through Excel. So it goes for the prices questionnaire, energy prices and taxes, for the energy R&D technology budget questionnaire that I talked about before, for the projection questionnaire, and also the energy efficiency indicator questionnaire. And there's also the gas trade flow questionnaire for short-term data. That's still done through by email. So our plan is to migrate all of this. So of course, using the experience, because it's been used for several years already. So we really want to use this experience to do it in the best way possible. So the RD&D questionnaire will be the first one that we're going to start with. It's already on the platform, so we'll reach out to countries, to some few countries, so we can pilot the new system, see what they think about it. We'll obviously give technical demonstration to show it's done to our contact, and give the possibility, I mean, in the medium term, to also submit by Excel if the countries are more comfortable with it. In parallel, we'll initiate the same work for the other questionnaires, so prices, projection, the energy efficiency indicator, and gas trade flows. And I think we would aim to have all the questionnaire with the possibility to upload on EVO by 2025. So that's me. If you have any questions.
Great, thanks very much, Susie. And we have the father, is it the grandfather of Evo, sitting in the back here, lurking in the back. He might come to the table for this one, but maybe not. Are there any questions that people would like to raise about the migration? I mean, how many years old is Evo? No, not you, but Evo. 7 years old. 7 years old. And so still a baby, exactly. Excellent. Marek?
I don't have a question. I have just a comment that on the side of Eurostat, we are experiencing exactly the same problems. And we also see it on the side of countries that there is now more interest to send us the CSV files. We use SDMX CSV, but the principle is exactly the same. The exchange of Excel files with macros is becoming more problematic, and more countries are now starting to investigate the transmission of the CSV files instead.
Yeah.
I can, as the country for Europe, say that yes, the statistics system of Sweden, we want SDMX CSV at the moment, because it's much consuming resources to use Excel macros files with every cell have their own function, and never is saved in any databases if you're not that interesting in data, that you know that you have to have your own classification database for all Excel macros, otherwise they are disappearing every time.
Okay. Any other points that people would like to raise? No questions there, just the fact that we need to move with the times, all of us, and this is an example of that. So we do the pilots. We do make it possible in the course of these different pilots to use the old system, but the objective really is to get rid of that in due course. And we try to be accommodating with respect to the time frame. Remind us what the time frame was. Everybody probably got it but me.
I said 2025, but
2025.
tends to.
Yes.
So we put a date.
But it's useful to have presentations such as this, because I think it drives home the point that we are expecting to be migrated entirely to that by 2025. Okay. And we're there to help if there's any way that we can help in the course of that migration. Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Susie. Go back to your office and get working. Now, we have Luca. I didn't see. Ah, there he is. Okay, got his haircut.
Hi, good morning. Have you shared my key? So I will talk about the implementation of our metadata system in a particular case for annual statistics, and in particular for non-questionnaire countries. So basically, I'm talking about annual energy balances of most of the non-member countries of OECD. The presentation structure is the following. In the last ESDG, we presented our metadata taxonomy, and this presentation is about showing an implementation of that taxonomy. So I'll show again the classification and the methodology developed for the implementation, some results, and finally conclusions and next steps. I see that the presentation, okay. The pointer doesn't work. Okay. So originally, an IEA data user looking at an energy database could see values. Of course, an example of a value is a record that could be 20 megawatt solar PV capacity, the year, and a given country. And there were also a few qualifiers available. The most used were estimated, not available, confidential. Then with the introduction of the new metadata, we can understand better the story behind the value. So from an IEA user point of view, we can answer the questions, where does it come from? So what is the source? How did it come to us? So the method. This bucket is particularly important for our work, since it makes us distinguish what are the data submitted, for example, through a questionnaire, what are the data that we actively extract or scrape, and what are the data that we compute, and then how the data point can be qualified, so the final qualification. Some additional notes: in a metadata system, confidentiality would need a separated bucket, but because it's not mutually exclusive with other qualifiers. However, we didn't implement it to avoid overcomplicating the system. We have already added 3 buckets, so we didn't want to overcomplicate the new system, at least for now. And then for more qualitative information associated to the data point, we can link it to the Q&A knowledge base that will be introduced afterwards. That is a different project, but anyway connected, and part of a vision of having databases more descriptive and with more insights. Then the metadata can be used as a proxy to assess the data quality and reliability. For example, from our perspective, we rely more on a data point that has been submitted to an AQ by a National Statistics Office than a data point that has been estimated based on a combination of different sources. So to conclude, this is an internal classification that will help enhance internal and external transparency once this metadata will be reported in our dissemination products. How we implement this for non-questionnaire countries. So basically the questionnaire countries, the countries that submit AQs, the majority of these data points are labeled by us as official submission observation. So it's more interesting, let's say, this system applied to non-questionnaire countries. The data collection is a bit trickier, and I will quickly explain how it works. So basically, we have an Excel file per country. You can see a scheme in the top part of the slide. where the first part of the tabs is dedicated to raw data collection. And in the final part, we have our templates of product time series that will be eventually loaded into our database. And these product templates are connected to the source tabs through formulas. So basically in these formulas, there is our methodology and harmonization to international recommendations work per data point, per value. So in the bottom part of the slide, there is a scheme, just to quickly mention the technique used to store the metadata. Basically, in the cell where there is the value, the background color keeps the metadata information. I can get back to it if someone is interested in this part. And how we automatically set this metadata for each value. It has been developed a formula interpretation algorithm that basically analyzes the raw data tab to understand the kind of source used, the type of formulas to understand the method adopted, and take advantage of some color patterns that are font color patterns that are present in our Excel. Again, I can go back to it if it's needed. So here we can see some results. This is what I called an X-ray of an energy balance. X-ray because it looks beyond the values, the data itself, and gives only information on the data point stories. Basically, it's on the left, you can see a screenshot of an energy balance for a given country in 2022. And the conditional formatting is based on the ranking that I reported on the right. So the cells that are not colored are zeros. So the ranking is designed based on experience, is just an example. Example of criteria is that observation data points are more reliable than estimates, submissions are more reliable than extractions, official sources are more reliable than any other source. Of course, from our perspective, as I said, official observed statistics are the most reliable. Indeed, I reported official submission observation as the top quality data, while an estimation based on a combination of different types of sources, the lowest quality. So looking more specifically to two sections here. On the left, you can see that natural gas and crude oil supply seem to be pretty reliable. They are derived from official statistics. Derived is a new qualifier we introduced that is used when the value is not reported as it is in our database, but there is, for example, a conversion factor between energy unit and physical unit, or it is an aggregate made by us, for example, the domestic supply. We just applied a formula. It's not as it is, but there has been some operation that anyway are not properly estimates. On the right, instead, you can see that the industrial sectors for diesel and fuel oil are estimated based on a combo of sources and official statistics, respectively. For example, in this country, we have a high statistical difference for these two products, and investigate this area of the balance. It's probably a good idea to enhance our output. So to conclude, a metadata system improves transparency, and it can also serve as a proxy for assessing data quality. It can help non-country experts, or more generally speaking, non-expert of a given domain to quickly visualize and understand the data collection and elaboration methodology. As we have seen with the screenshot before, it's very easy and quick to see where could be the main issues of the data collection of a given country, for example. The next steps in terms of this project management are moving from a development phase of this metadata setting automation to a production phase. So we will implement this system across all the countries, the non-member countries, the non-questionnaire countries. And then we can start developing internal metadata statistics and metrics that can indicate the status of an entity, like a product, a region, a country, a flow. We can start thinking what could be the best way to represent the status of a country and elaborate better ranking also. And finally, we need to translate our classification that, as I said, that this is an internal approach. It's tailored to our situation into external dissemination. And this part of the job, I guess, will be presented related with the SDMX presentation. We haven't, for this specific part, we haven't started this translation yet. But the same rule will be applied across CDC. So thanks for your attention. If you have any question.
Okay, thank you very much, Luca. Are there any questions? I have one. I shouldn't have one, but that just goes to show how good a manager I am. Are there any flags raised before I? No. I've seen the previous presentation on this. We didn't have the normative element. So as you know, when I first arrived, I mean, I started off life as a user of IEA data, and the lack of metadata on occasion, or the imperfections associated with metadata, sometimes bothered me. And so one of the things I pushed for was that we start to do this systematically, and it's been a long process. And I think we've really gone a long way in terms of that. And you know, the big objective will be to make this available to users of our data, so they really understand, you know, when it's an official submission, when it's estimated, and all the rest of it. But I'm wondering about the additional step of attaching normative values to this. Do we need to do that, and do we care? And I'm asking you whether or not we need to do that, or do we just need to know the elements and the tags for the different values? And so that you know, what is the purpose of introducing the normative element and saying better or worse? I'm thinking particularly when you say derived is worse. Well, not necessarily. It's not necessarily worse than the original data point.
No, maybe I didn't get what do you mean with normative value?
We described the difference, and then we said this is higher quality.
Yeah.
This is lower quality.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I would say it's necessary from our point of view, so internal point of view, based on our experience. It is an heuristic approach. So we know, I think that it's very useful, for example, for a manager, as I said, like a non-country expert that see the balance for the first time. And he or she can quickly visualize with, for example, this conditional formatting, the status of the balance. And we know from our experience what could be a higher data point quality or lower data point quality. For example, derived, there is an operation in the middle. So it introduces error-prone action. For example, as an extraction, there is an action of in this case, the IEA officer that could extract in a worse way than if the data were submitted and he or she didn't touch it. So I think that we can elaborate that, and it's very heuristic, really based on our experience. And I think that the one that I showed, it's the ranking that I showed is an example, but it's already based on my experience, pretty meaningful. And I see correlation, for example, with the data quality, the value quality, like the statistical differences, and this data quality ranking, there is a correlation. So of course, I always put likely. It's not like, it's not something that is, there is a strict causality. It's likely, it's a proxy, it's an indication, but I think it could be useful for us, for our point of view. Then for external dissemination, that's another matter. I mean, we We haven't translated this yet, and we can decide. I mean, it's not nothing has been developed on that side.
That's extremely helpful, Luca. And I mean, what you're using this for is to identify potential measurement, the likelihood of potential measurement error. And the last point, of course, you make is fundamentally important, that we would be in the external dissemination showing your table, but not attributing any normative value.
No, I wanted to, I hope that it was clear during the presentation that this is our point of view. So it's an internal point of view. It's an internal classification, internal actions. This is things that we have developed for us. So it's an internal development. Then we can elaborate on how to disseminate.
I'm sure it was clear to everybody except me in the room.
No.
Nicholas.
I totally agree with Luca, because this is an internal issue even in our Swedish Energy Agency, in our statistical system with our National Statistical Bureau, Statistics Sweden. We are working for that because with you, we have a negotiation that we are doing statistics to you, to commission. We are obligated to do this. And if some reporting in European Union is not correlated with the statistics in Eurostat with Marek and his friends, there is problem. That's a problem with the definition and the metadata, that there are persons doing things with sources that are not qualified, but be used as figures. And I totally agree, but it's an internal issue.
So during Luca's presentation, I actually noted something down that relates to your point, Nick, your question. I really appreciated the X-ray view. I feel like internally within Canada too, it could be something that could be useful. So as an example, like in our monthly submissions, NRCan, we're bringing in data points from many different data sources. And those data sources use different methodologies. And then also depending on the month of the submission, for example, in M3, we'll have a much more complete picture, but in M-2, M-1, it's a different kind of situation. And so if upper management were to ask us and my team, we're able to give them an idea of the data quality in M-3 or M-1, but it's a complicated story. And probably having like that X-ray view and comparing between months is something that would be very helpful for someone to look at and get an idea. So I think that that's something that could be applied on our side too, as we're actually in the process of updating our documentation on all these different cells of the questionnaires for our benefit. But I do have a question. So I think the presentation, it's focused on like non-questionnaire countries. I know that via our interactions with the various IEA reporting teams, you might have a sense of what data sources we're using for a given cell. But I figure that, are you limiting this approach to non-questionnaire countries, or is there possibility to do something for IEA reporters as well?
So this is still related to the point that is our point of view. So from our point of view, the countries who submit the questionnaire, the metadata for those data points will be by default official if it is an official, a national statistic office or the delegated entity, submission, observation, because that's what we see and what we label. And for, I would say, 95% of the data point that have been submitted, this is the metadata setting. Then, of course, there are a few data points where we adjust, where we make estimation, but it's us, it's not from the country perspective. Then, when and if there will be flags in the questionnaire, we will have probably these two systems, and we'll have to decide and see how to merge them or having them separated, and see again what would be the external dissemination. But yeah, I'm happy that you like the X-ray view, and we really invite countries to develop their metadata system, because the point is that it's very tailored, And for example, maybe you don't need the method bucket. For us, it's useful. Maybe you need it because you extract the data. Maybe you don't have submission. I don't know. It's very useful, and it allows to be more organized in transparency, and so it's even easier to answer to our queries and vice versa, and to have data more organized and with methodology that is clearly visible in the database.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. Is from our perspective, and so in effect, you know, it's sometimes twice or three times removed, and we can't go back up the chain, which makes the source fundamentally important. So, you know, Canada has a survey in which, you know, it's a good representative sample of God knows what, and as a lousy survey of somewhere else, we're not going to assess the survey. We're just going to say what the source is, because it's what we do with the data. And I think that makes life complicated for IGOs or for the users of data from IGOs, because in effect, you might have to go up the trail in order to assess get a perspective of what you think the value, the potential for measurement error is. And I think that's a fundamentally important point. We need to make that clear in our documentation and with respect to it, because it's different from the metadata that you would have for your own statistical releases, where you know the characteristics of the surveys inside out, or the sources of the data, and we just can't do that. There's a lot of people here, but not that many. Any other questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, quality has many dimensions, and in my experience, users are very much focusing on two of them. One of them is accuracy, and the second one is timeliness or punctuality. And what we did in our project was looking on the quantitative analysis of the quality, trying to somehow identify what could be the accuracy or confidence interval of certain elements in energy balances, and to put certain numbers that would allow seeing, for example, if we are monitoring the target and we are saying we progressed 0.5% towards the target, but if the aggregate has a 3% inaccuracy, it's very difficult to track progress at that level of magnitude. However, energy statistics is usually a multi-source statistics. So we combine surveys, administrative data, census, estimation, expert judgment, and it's extremely difficult to properly assess the uncertainty. I have seen a very good work done in the past by the former colleague of the working group, the Wolfgang Bittermann from Austria. He did a very good job for the uncertainty or essentially accuracy analysis of the energy balances in Austria, which was essentially motivation for our own projects on the quantitative indicators. But it seems that we as an international organization don't have sufficient information to judge that the microdata and the collection methods are only available at the level of countries, and we as the organization who receives the questionnaire or is having access to data without access to microdata and their types, how they were collected, we cannot properly do that. So we put it in our quality reporting on the side of countries, but there is a big interest of the users on seeing the different quality of data points in the database. So with that, I agree that the need for the additional information is there. The question is how to properly assess it, because even if data point is estimated and unofficial, it might be more accurate than the official data point. And it's very difficult how to properly assess it and who should do that.
Would you be able to share that report? A link to that report? Do you have that report? Yeah, even if
yes,
it's
we can,
ancient.
we can share it. I was just checking if the project was finished, but I think the project was finished and we should have the final report.
Okay.
So we will make sure that it's
I'm
it's
going to send links
distributed.
afterwards, and if I can send a link to that, that would be great. Any other questions for this item? Yes, of course, Nicholas.
I totally agree with Marek as a country in the Eurostat. The flags that we have for the validation is one of the tools. And I'm not agreeing with you, Luca. Official estimated is much more reliable than other sources, because then you have to evaluate the quality where you got it from. And official statistics, we are better than in methodology and many others. So if we do estimated figures to you, that's much more knowledge behind it than if you are getting some other data sources that we don't know the quality of.
I haven't seen to have mentioned that. So in the ranking that I propose, official is always top. So for non-member countries is when we as IEA estimate. So we are talking, the presentation was about a non-questionnaire. So there is much more work on our side for those countries, because we have to gather the data and we need to fill the data gaps with our estimation. So official calculation estimation, it means that there is an IEA data officer that make an estimation, probably correlated to external variables that are official statistics, okay? So that's lower quality, of course, than an official submission or observation or an extraction where.
Very interesting discussion, and I come back to the point I made originally about because it gets to what Marek was saying about accuracy. We don't actually know the accuracy, so it's more a measure of potential for measurement error based on the number, characteristics, and number of the interventions on the data that we make. And I think it's important that we do that, in part because when we're going to start disseminating the metadata as an IGO, we need to be very careful about what it means and what it doesn't mean, since in many cases it's second or third order for us. And I think that's the key point. Is that right?
Yeah, I agree that it's difficult to assess the accuracy. But anyway, as I said, it's a proxy, and it's based on our experience for this specific case where there is a lot of IEA work, basically to compute and to disseminate these kind of statistics. I think that is, of course, we are talking about likelihood, but it's pretty reliable to have a ranking like that to understand as a proxy the data quality and so the accuracy of this energy balance that was not submitted to us. So for this specific, it's very tailored to our specific project, but for this, I think that is it's just an additional indicator. Then you can trust it more or less. And indeed, one of the next steps was to develop internal metadata statistics and metrics rankings that it's part of the next steps, let's say, to think about more these. But at the moment, we can have this kind of metadata per data point. That is what was implemented. And from that onwards, we can develop more stuff that can indicate us the status of a given country, for example.
Okay, thanks very much, Luca. I see you're up again, or is it you, Diony?
We're together.
You're together.
Together, yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's just hope it's not as interesting as the last one, or else we'll never have lunch.
No, this is boring. Okay, so I'm waiting for the share, but can start. So Diony and I will present a new web-based platform that should streamline the query and answers process between IEA and countries. So just a quick overview of the presentation. First, I will explain what this Q&A platform is and why it's needed. I'll present the main characteristics. Before that, Diony will give you a demonstration of how it works. And finally, we'll get to the conclusions and we'll present what are the rollout plans. So the Q&A is a new platform where the IEA officers can make questions on data points to country focal points. Basically, this platform should streamline the Q&A process that will be more efficient and more organized, and it will replace the current system of exchange via emails. So why we need it? Because we need a system that keeps track of the exchanges of information that are very valuable automatically and in a structured way. Indeed, the exchanges of information will be automatically stored in the Q&A database, a knowledge base, and they will be easily accessible by countries and, of course, IEA officers, thanks to the implementation of metadata, which is a tagging system to each question. In this case, I'm not talking about qualitative metadata that I've introduced before, but I'm talking about metadata like the product dimension, the flow dimension, the year dimension, etc. So the key characteristics. First of all, the platform has been designed following an ease of use philosophy. So it had to be simple to use and easily accessible. To answer a query, it won't take longer and won't be more difficult than answer to an email. The main features, and after that, Diony will show you how it practically works, and it will be even easier to understand. It is a web centralized platform, so all the questions and answers are centralized in a unique place. To access it, you need the same EVO credentials, and you will have the same access to country and questionnaires as you have in EVO. As was already explained by Susie before, for context, EVO is the data collection and validation platform, and a Q&A user has to have an EVO account. However, for non-member countries, non-OECD, non-questionnaire countries that do not submit the data through EVO, it is anyway possible to use the Q&A platform. We'll just create your account in EVO, and we'll invite and encourage you to use the new platform instead of answering our emails. So regarding the notification, the user will receive an email with all the questions that has been asked. And in the email, there is a link per question that will directly point you to the question page where you can answer. And you will see that the questions are tagged with the same EVO metadata. So it will be easier to understand the question. It is consistent to the metadata of the questionnaire. So I'll pass over to Diony for a demo.
Thank you, Luca. Let me share my screen. Okay, as we said, the Q&A platform is a web-based platform. This means that you can access it either by typing the URL in a browser or through the email notification. So this is how the email notification will look like. We see the list of the questions related to the questionnaires that you have access, and the IEA data officer has notified. You can access the platform by clicking on the link corresponding to the number of the question. So let me do it. We see now the main login page. As we said before, we use the EVO credentials to access to the platform. I will land to the home page. Here we see the list of questions related to your country and to the questionnaires that you have access at EVU. We see a summary of it that includes the title, the status, the priority, and the questionnaire. The status can be new. This means that the IEA data officer has created the question, but the country user hasn't yet viewed or replied to the question. When the country user opens the question, this status changed to pending. And when we start replying to the question, the status will change to in progress. When the request has been complete and there is no any further action, then the IEA data officer will change the status to resolve. We can now open one of the questions. I will go to the 78, the new one. So we move to the main page of the question. This is split in 4 sections. The first part, we see the title of the question, which shows the main object of it. Then we see the metadata section. As we said before, each question corresponds to specific metadata elements related to the questionnaire. So these are the product, the flow, the questionnaire, the date, and this will help us later filtering the questions in an easier way. Then we see the body of the question. So the content, we can have rich text here, we can have images, we can attach documents. And at the bottom of the page, we see the reply box in which you can type your answer and submit it to the tool, clicking on send. And you see immediately your reply here. If we go back to the home page, we will see that this question that we just replied, its status changed from new to in progress. This helps us to track questions that are still pending from our side. We talk about the filter feature as one of the main features of this platform, and now we are going to see how it works. So the filter section helps us to find information related to past questions and answers. I will give an example. Let's say that I'm working for Statisland and the monthly gas statistics. I see the time series view and I see a break in stocks in 2018. I'm going to use these elements into the filter section to see if there are any relevant questions in my list. So in the questionnaire, I'm going to select MOS gas. We said that we see a break in stock, so under flow, I will search for the relevant metadata. So closing stock on national territory and opening stock level. We see already that the list of the questions are sorted corresponding to my filtering. And then I will also add the date. I saw that this is happening in January of 2018. I'm going to open the question to see if it is relevant to the data observation that I want to investigate. And here I see all the metadata relevant to this question. The question itself. At the bottom, I see all the exchanges between the IEA data officers and the country users. But I also have a conclusion box. This is a summary of the finding of the specific request. And it's going to be very useful if we are searching issues in the past. So indeed, I see here that there was a break in stock due to a change in the reporting methodology. I'm going to finish this short demonstration with another feature, which is the question of interest on the top right of the page. So what we see here on the top is the questions associated to our user account, grouped by status. It's an easy overview of the things that are still pending and you need to address. Then under the unseen section, we see questions that you follow that have been modified but not yet seen by you. And at the bottom, we see the following section, which includes the questions that you follow. That means questions that you have created, modified, or commented by you. I think we have now finished with the demonstration. It's short because we want to have a tool that is easy to use and provides, improves the communication with you. I will move now back to Luca.
Yeah, thanks. If you can share back, Mikey, please. And so to conclude, the Q&A platform will facilitate the tracking of past queries and responses that will remain at disposal of each country. At the moment, the current system is based on emails, and the new system will allow to organize better the exchanges. For example, the search functionality will be superior to the Outlook's search. The platform can support the high staff turnover that many countries have, because it simplified the onboarding processes by providing new staff with easy access to historical Q&As. Then it will be clearer for a country focal point manager who are the contacts in his or her team that will be notified for this or that questionnaire. So also from a management perspective, for example, there is no need to check if the relevant colleagues are on CC of every email. You could see that from the admin panel. And finally, on IEA side, it will prevent repetition of queries. How many queries have you seen that have been repeated over the years? So also for us, it will be easier to pass on to new colleagues since we have a high staff turnover. So it will be easier for them to check what was already queried or not. And therefore, there will be less questions eventually, because we will create over time this knowledge base that it's the first place where we check the answer of a question that we have in mind. And clearly, we can track better unanswered questions in this way. Regarding the next steps, the plans to roll out are different depending on the teams. We'll have an initial trial phase. So for short-term statistics between January and March, there will be a trial phase, and then the plan is having the platform as official system from April 2024. While for annual statistics, since we are already in the middle of the cycle, we are looking for country volunteers that have not been queried yet for any fuel is welcome, I mean. And then we'll implement it from the mini Q cycle in May 2024. So please reach out to us if you want to start testing the platform. There are already a few countries that have kindly accepted to try it. So we are already in the trial phase. And please consider that your feedback will be essential in shaping the final version of the tool. This is a tool that is tailored to our needs, and it is still working in progress. So we have margins for improving it. And the sooner we play with the foundation, the easier is to modify things. So I invite you to reach out to us. Diony will follow the work on short-term statistics. I will work on annual statistics side. And that's it, if you have any questions or comments.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much, Luca. And I think the second last slide, I want to emphasize that. The idea is that over time, we're asking fewer redundant questions of you, that we're checking first internally. And As Luca mentioned, we do have high staff turnover, and so I'm sure that in the past, maybe despite our best efforts, we have harassed you rather more than we will do so when the new tool is up and running. And I encourage you, of course, to volunteer to try it out. Simon?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation and for this initiative. I learned about this last week during our bilateral meeting. Very happy to volunteer my team to start using this as soon as it's available. Over on our side, we had tried to develop something similar, just in Excel, having to log, conversations or topics and stuff, but it required a lot of commitment. I think this way is much easier to implement this kind of system. Yeah, I had a couple questions just out of my own curiosity and interest. So while IEA tends to be the initiator of most questions and all that, will the
Yeah.
platform have an option for the questions to come from the other side, on the user side? And also, will this platform be used? Do you anticipate using it to compile a systematic measure of countries' response time to queries in terms of that evaluation? Thank you.
Don't answer the second question, Luca.
It was yes. So regarding the first feature that you mentioned, it's something that we have thought about. At the moment, is not present, this feature. So at the moment is IA towards countries, but we have thought about it, and it would be easy to be implemented, and it's something that we can do in the future based on feedback. So if you think that is needed and valuable, we can implement it easily. So we are very open to this kind of thing, as also others. As I said, it's working in progress. It's tailored to our needs. We have our developer here. Where is it? That he will be happy to to satisfy our requests. Let's say, of course, if they are doable. And well, yeah, also regarding the second question, of course, the more metadata we have, the more we can easily track internal statistics. So we will have when the query has been done, when it was answered, when the question was created. So we have thought that if this platform will start to be working, implemented, we will take this information for example, for the report cards creation. Yes.
I thought I told you not to answer that
Yeah,
question. Arnaud, if you could check Reinhardt's query in the chat, and then, because we'll be turning to you afterwards, you can respond to that, okay? And we also had a question online from Olivier. Olivier?
Yes, thank you and good morning. Thank you for this initiative. This is really welcome from our side. But I do not catch one thing, is if Eurostat will have access to track the answer for European country, because it was an advantage to have the email system is that Eurostat also receive our answer and then can also follow the answers by country. Thank
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, this is of course something that is possible. As we said, the Q&A platform is a tool that we have developed internally. So in general, we have the flexibility to work with it. Adding users from Eurostat will not be any problem, and Eurostat already has access to EBO. So it will not require any further development from our side.
Are there any other questions or is that the same flag as previously, Simon? Yeah. I do that all the time too.
It's Canadian.
At home when we're having dinner, my flag is just permanently up. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? If not, then I think we can turn to the final item for this agenda item. And I'll know just if you could start off just by responding to the query which related to the presentation before last.
Yes, so there was a comment from Reno about the accuracy of statistics, that it was something that we were discussing before, and how those are also very important when it comes to GHG reporting. And we wanted to say that both are indeed linked, since like GHG or like emission statistics, mainly when they come from energy, they are also related to the accuracy of energy statistics. So in general, like when we can work on accuracy of those, it will also translate to climate statistics, and it's something that it's very important to address and to try to improve as we can. Of course, first we have to work on availability, but it's also important to work on accuracy of energy statistics, as it translates also on the climate space.
One issue.
Well, at the IEA, one of the things that we do is with the UNFCCC, we do this annual thing every year where we compare the data that is submitted to them on the energy terms, and we compare it to ours. Same for the carbon factors. If they submit, we compare to the ones that we are using. That's the space that we are working on, but we can of course try to explore more. You were saying the EAA, for example, we can try to see with other institutions if there's areas to collaborate on that.
They have one problem that you don't have anymore. They don't have the ordinance of getting the microdata from countries that are the ones supporting to have for the Green Deal in the climate reporting. They just get some summaries, and you get microdata, and that's difference for them because they can only say something of the aggregate, and you need to know the details, and that's always energy statistics. So please help them to make that they have an ordinance also. If OECD have one, you have one, they should also have one.
No, I think the responsibilities are slightly different, Nicholas. I mean, EEA is reporting the emissions of the European Union based on the Eurostat energy data. Sorry, then I leave it to Eurostat. No, because we are doing different work. We don't report anything official in terms of emissions. We really focus on the energy statistics, and your data are the basis of our official statistics. Then we compute emissions as a benchmark at the global level. But we are not producing official emissions estimation for countries at the IEA, while the EEA, Marek?
Okay, the situation is a little bit complicated. We in Eurostat collect energy statistics. Mostly in this case are relevant the joint annual questionnaires with all the details of the fuels. European Environment Agency collects emission inventories that are transmitted by the countries. There is a European legal act that enacts that the activity data for the emissions, which are de facto the energy consumption data, should have only very small deviation from the energy statistics reported to Eurostat. And we are in contact with the European Environment Agency. They participate in our working group, and they are using the data from our database to verify the activity data in the emission inventories. Once they calculate the carbon emission inventories, Eurostat is republishing the results calculated by or confirmed by the European Environment Agency. So we are not calculating the greenhouse gas emissions ourselves in Eurostat, but the energy data are used in the validation process by the European Environment Agency in Copenhagen.
Thanks very much. Sorry, I should have seen that question in the chat previously, my mistake. Arnaud, back to you.
Yes, so this last presentation, it's going to be on the migration of the agency statistical output to a new platform, to DotStat, after a long time of using Beyond 2020. And I wanted to say a couple of things about it. First, that on the data side, we have split that into teams, one working on the technical part, the infrastructure part, and another one working on the harmonization side. I wanted to say that there on this project, there's several colleagues working on it, but given the implications for all the data team and how it's gonna last and how it's gonna change the way we produce data, people and colleagues from all the different teams in the data center are involved in it.
The migration of our output to DotStat. And this project is particularly important because it marks the migration for our primary dissemination tool, Beyond 2020, which served us for many years. And we have decided to transition to DotStat Suite because it's used by our parent institution, OECD, but also by NCO since it facilitates also the management of statistical data. Let's start. It's not working. Sorry. Yes. So a few words on DotStat Suite. It's an open source platform that is used both for data production and data dissemination. One of the native language is STMX that we have opted for since its large use in the global statistical community. STMX is the international standard that we are currently using to provide a uniform representation of the data with the code list, concept, data flow that are all part of the data structure definition and which are part of the its information model with artifacts. As we embark in this transition, this implies that from our side, we need to modernize and adapt our data processing technique in order to adjust the workflow to our new dissemination format. But it also means that we need some changes in our data warehouse to create the connection with the STMX artifacts, but as well on the metadata to standardize them and harmonize them in order to make them STMX compatible. The solution we thought about aimed at creating indeed a connection for our database to the STMX concept in order to migrate the IVTs to DotStat Suite. And we have done that by tackling the metadata challenge with the harmonization group that we'll present later. And also with our STMX tool. We developed a tool that allows us to create the 4 artifacts fully in Python. We have started first with a dummy data set and then with a proper connection to the data warehouse. And on the front end, we are currently working on a user-friendly web app that allows the user to create the STMX XML output. With this solution, we're able to streamline the dissemination process. We're able to start from the origin from our database and connect the output to the DLM, which is the back end of DotStat, the data lifecycle manager, and also enhancing the collaboration as we will be in charge of the first 2 parts, the metadata and the STMX tool, and while the colleague from IT and communication will be in charge of overseeing in the last dissemination stage. So why did we opt for this solution? First, because it allows us to keep the data warehouse at the center of our procedures, eliminating any type of manual extraction, intermediary step, and keeping the data warehouse as a single source of truth. Also, this tool is more efficient for us because it's an in-house tool that is based on our skills and IT capabilities, reducing all the dependency and control dependency to external packages and libraries. And as I said before, also because it allows us to connect directly to the DLM, so output to backend of DotStat. The benefit of the solution are many, and one of those is also on the data accessibility, because we're able to access data with the STMX connector and also with the web service queries. And the big benefit is also from our side, as we're able to improve the maintenance overhead and keep track of changes and a revision. The risks are, of course, related to the adoption challenge, and of course also to the fact that we're using the STMX language. I'll pass the floor to Juha.
Thank you very much, Suki. I'm gonna introduce now you to the project approach. I'm Juha Köykkä. Nice to meet you, everybody. And to continue, there's a first of all, we have to say that the project is not only about programming, but also like researching the background and also designing what we want the users to see, how we want them to interact with the data and with the tables. So first we started with the technical research phase. So as Suki also mentioned, we compared different existing solutions. We reviewed STMX artifacts, familiarized ourselves with those. And then when he had the solution, we started coding the Python program, and that is used to basically create the STMX artifacts and to also connect to our data warehouse and to connect to the .stat DLM. And after that, we have been working on the web app, which is the UI for the users to use these tools. And next steps will be testing documentation, but also we are gonna introduce a human validation step into the app, and that's something that's gonna be also discussed still. Suki, can you click next one? Thanks. So here you can see in our data warehouse, we basically have views where we have the data, and then we have the metadata already kind of formatted into the STMX format. Click. Thanks. Then we use Python to read this data from there and combine it to a format that is compatible with the .stat. So this is basically on the top, you can see the data flow, and on below you will see now the workflow of the web app. So basically, here you can see that the user, so this is what the user can do with the app. They can view the data sets, and then those data sets, they can create and edit them. They can create and edit code lists. And if they make changes, those need to be validated. So there's a step of human validation, basically. So there will be a team of people from the data team confirming that the changes will be compliant with the harmonization. And basically, on the app, the changes which will be made will impact the data warehouse tables. So the user will actually be able to interact with the data warehouse with this app. And then also when the validation comes, the user can upload it to the DLM in .stat. And then after that, it's going to be available for the users. So that's all from our part. Now, Karina, thanks. I guess we're going to...
Hello, everyone. So as was mentioned already by Juha and Sukaina, it became obvious during the STMX project that we needed to also harmonize our code lists. This is because STMX works best with one single set of code lists, not our current state, which is many, many, many different code lists, that some of which point to the same things. So for you, all of you, the data users, the benefits are that our different EDC data sets will become much more comparable. So if you look at the code for biofuels in monthly data, and you look at the code for biofuels in the future for annual data, you'll know that you're looking at the same energy product. There will also be more explicit dimensions. You don't have to guess perhaps whether you're looking at kilotons or kilobarrels. It will be right there in the STMX viewer. And as well, there will be more consistent mapping between our codes in the IEA and other standards that are out there like CIIC. For us, the data producers, it's also adds clarity to our life. It makes any sort of hierarchy very easy to do. And it also, again, it works nicely with the STMX platform. We also have a much easier time generating documentation because we only have, again, one single set of code lists, not many. So our documentation can be more automated. And finally, we can incorporate not just our current state, which is IVTs, but other formats for our data dissemination. Our process for the harmonization team was 4 basic steps. The first step was to gather all of our published codes and put them in a gigantic list. This helped us to then get an initial idea of our concepts, which is basically just buckets into which we could put our different codes. I'll show you an example in a couple slides. The next thing we did was to take a step back, look at other groups, such as IRENA, such as, of course, the OECD, UNSD, and Eurostat, to see what else is out there in terms of code lists. This is because we want to, of course, be consistent as much as possible with other standards, and also, to see where our codes might be weak and where we can make them a bit stronger. The third step is to, in which we are currently, is to take a deeper dive into our codes, which ones we need to change, which ones we need to add, which are already good, and make sure that everything is well aligned in a single set of lists. And finally, we will have a final proposal for the code lists that will include a mapping between our current codes and a new code and the new codes, and as well a good harmonization with external standards. So these are just, I won't go through all these obviously, but for your information, the buckets that we decided on, some of them were obvious, like of course country and region. They are run through all of our different data sets. Some of them only became apparent after we did initial sorting, kind of get what's left in terms of the codes that are outstanding, and things such as currency or scenario. And that's was one of the challenges that we faced, was assigning all those extra codes to well-identified concepts. Talking a bit more deeply into the concept definition challenges, our main one is just that we have different definitions for some codes. Classic example is biofuels. If you look at our renewables questionnaire, it includes both pure and blended biofuels. But if you look at our annual oil questionnaire, it's only blended biofuels. So this is obviously something that we want to clarify and ensure that we have a consistent set of codes for encompassing this type of situation. Another classic example is different levels of detail for codes such as motor gasoline. Different data sets care about different aspects of this code. So in monthly oil data, it's just one energy product, motor gasoline. But if you look at prices, if you look at gasolines, they're broken out in a completely different fashion. And again, this is something we want to fix with our new set of code lists. And the last thing, which gets into a bit of making the dimensions and the units explicit, is just that we previously had codes that combined multiple an energy product or a sector with a unit, such as a currency. We want to break that apart, and this will also facilitate if you want to change, for example, the currency in which you're viewing the data. You can much more easily do that when it's broken out. Another challenge we had in our stage 2, looking at external standards, was just finding that, number one, there are many standards for one thing. There are many standards, for example, for energy products or for countries' regions. The second is finding that these standards don't always cover fully our needs. So our approach is going to be more of a mixed approach, where we look at what's out there. To the extent possible, we harmonize and, of course, provide a mapping for that. And then where it's not possible, or where the IEA is the standard, we will keep with our current clean code list. And our final code list will be a combination of a harmonization with the external standard and where we need to fill in with our current codes. Finally, just to add in, for the entire project, our focus is to document really well both the SDMX tools that we will be using internally, and our code lists as well. As I mentioned, will be much easier to generate our documentation for you, our users, and to have really clean metadata. That's it from our side. Any questions I would be happy to take either now or in the future if we're going to lunch.
Okay, thanks to all of you. I felt like I was in a tennis match there for a while, back and forth between Elno, Suki, Juha, and Karina at the end. I think this is, the motivation for this is to make life easier for you, for ourselves, of course, as well, but primarily for you. And our selection, obviously this needed to be done irrespective. We had to harmonize our code list. I just wanted to go back to the selection of .stat or stat suite. That was also motivated in part by the fact that I think there are 6 or 7 member country statistical agencies that are a part of that. And so we thought that would also facilitate life, for at least for some members, because there's a certain certain large minority of statistical ONSs across NSOs across the IAA membership that are already using it. So are there any questions or comments to any of the four presenters, or all of the four presenters? Oh, there's a question online. Thanks a lot, Mikey. My eyes. Rainud. It's in the tool. Sorry, it's in the
Q&A.
Yes, thank you for
there we
the. You can hear me?
We can hear you well.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the very nice presentation and good to see the very smooth cooperation. Gives a kind of feeling how it works in practice. So that's just that looks very good. What we are wondering most important for us is, of course, as we are a data supplier, and we also supply data to Eurostat, which is already possible for some data sets in SDMX format with all kind of code lists. And it is foreseen that all annual questionnaires will get SDMX format. And we are wondering whether the code list of Eurostat will be the same SDMX as that one of IEA, so that in the end we can send the same file, SDMX file, to Eurostat and to the International Energy Agency. This is crucial, would be very helpful for us, and also this harmonizing these concepts in standard code lists. It's also helpful because if it really standardized, it can facilitates also a more easy programming from our side, because we have a consistent system, and if you have harmonized, then our programs get simpler as well. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Rainud. Stev has volunteered to respond.
Hi. We were collaborating some time ago with Eurostat on their SDMX. It was really on the data collection side. Here we are really talking about the IEA dissemination side, so it's not at all the same thing. If you want to send the SDMX files to us like you are doing with Eurostat, it's not impossible on our side, but we will have to work on the development of this feature. But here we are talking really of the dissemination side, so it's not the data reporting. Thanks.
And I would like to confirm that exactly the same is happening on the side of Eurostat. I will give some examples. The SDMX initiative is a common initiative of multiple international organizations, and of course it has a geographical list. But when it comes to each individual organization, we have our own instructions, or call it a publication style guide, and there are certain worldwide regions that are problematic, that different organizations refer to differently. So if you go to the geo code lists, you notice different names and different codes for these countries, because we have to respect the decision of our hierarchies, but at the same time on the international level, we also need to find an agreement. So there are hundreds of minor things that needs to be adjusted in the code lists. And of course, the Eurostat code lists needs to be also harmonized across all statistical domains. So we as an energy unit are only a small wheel in the big machine, and we don't have so much freedom as the IEA has in choosing the most suitable codes for the energy products or the categories that they wish to disseminate.
That said, Marek, of course, we have an interest where it makes sense to ensure that we harmonize outside of the IEA for code lists for which others have primary responsibility. So if I take the example of the energy efficiency data, it can be aggregated up to ISA codes, which are standard code lists. And so to the extent that we can do so, if it does not diminish the value of the data per se, then we do so. And I think that was a point that was raised in the discussion. That said, we have a lot of internal issues as well, but the objective is also to make data commensurable across different areas. Any other questions raised? Thank you. So, I mean, I hope that you've seen that the theme of this morning's presentations was seeking ways to facilitate your lives. I hope you agree that we're moving in the right direction. However, we always welcome, both through the formal consultation processes, but just an email to me or to whomever, any thoughts that you may have, how we can do so even further. So there are no further points, and we can break for lunch, which I think, is it just through this way or just through these doors? Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks very much, and we'll come back for those of you online at probably slightly after what, 1:45? I think we're fine for that. At what does that make it? 1:45? Yeah, quarter before the hour then, 1:45. Thank you very much, rather than at whatever it was. It was at 1:30, so at 1:45. Thanks very much. Oh. Okay, well, I think we can start the afternoon session. For those of you online, apologies for the slight delay. Now is always the most interesting part for me of the ESDG meetings, presentations from the country's regions, in this case as well. So I'll turn the floor over to Edito. Will you be starting out? Yeah, you'll be first. Okay. Then Mike, if you could pull up Edito's presentation, followed by Nobuhiro just afterwards. But we'll do first yours and then have a discussion, and then Nobuhiro's. Okay?
That's right.
Very good.
Thank you very much, Nick. For the benefit of those who don't know yet, we are from the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, a group of 21 member economies in the Asia Pacific Rim, and including Russia and the USA, Canada, big economies in the world. So we have 8 common members with the IEA. So that's why we attend this Energy Statistics Development Group meeting to keep us posted of what the IEA is collecting from our common member economies. So today I would like to make a presentation on the new data collection in APEC to inform also our 8 common members about the plan of APEC and energy data collection. So this is the outline of my presentation, and it is our new data collection is because of energy transition that is being discussed by energy ministers in APEC, and because of that, we found that we need to collect more data, and these are the new data that we will be collecting. First is hydrogen, ammonia, and e-fuels, district cooling, grid scale electricity storage, electricity consumption of road vehicles, and fugitive greenhouse gas emissions from energy combustion, and from energy, and CO2 transport and storage. So for why in energy transition affects our data collection, the first is due to energy transition policies, many economies are increasing electricity generation from wind and solar. and there are more ambitious greenhouse gas emissions reduction. And many economies are planning to adopt new technologies, hoping to address these energy transition challenges. And these are electric vehicles, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, and energy storage. So these are the data requirements. So APEC member economies acknowledge that new and emerging technologies will play a significant role in energy transition and meeting carbon neutrality goals. And having reliable and complete data is important for decision-making processes. And data collection templates need to be modified to capture new and emerging technologies. However, there are open issues such as variety of data are increasingly available for collection, yet reporting still lag. And legal frameworks that require mandatory collection and reporting of energy statistics of existing technologies are still lacking. So for my colleague, Mr. Sawamura, will report on the hydrogen data collection later. So I will now jump to district cooling. So APEC started collecting district cooling data from non-OECD members during the collection of 2016 data. And China, one of those non-OECD members, mentioned in an APEC workshop on energy statistics that district cooling data is included in their heat data. And Japan and Korea also include heat data in their district cooling data in their heat data. For when we started this data collection, no non-OECD economies can report district cooling data, although there were known installations in Malaysia, Singapore, and the Philippines. As of the latest data collection for the 2021 data, only Hong Kong, China is able to report, and they have been reporting since 2019. So we already have 3 years of Hong Kong district cooling data. And I just had a meeting with Malaysia at 4 a.m. this morning that they may be able to start data collection this year. We have a meeting with the Malaysia District Cooling Association, and they were happy to share their data to the Malaysian government. So this is our template. So district cooling facilities that we know supply chilled water to consumers. So we wanted them to report the chilled water production in this template, and they should identify what are the sources of their, what are the fuels they use for district cooling. So if it's from coal, then they have to report the amount of chilled water under coal, oil, gas, etc. And for chilled water production using electricity, grid electricity is to be reported in others. So these are the cooling data requirements that we ask. First is for this cogeneration facility, what is the fuel used? And then since they will be using the fuel to generate electricity, what is the amount of electricity produced and the amount of electricity used in the electric chillers? And what is the total production of chilled water and the amount of chilled water that is sold? So this is basically what we ask. And if I show you the district cooling data of Japan, I mentioned earlier that they include cooling data in heat. You can see from these two columns here, hot water, chilled water, air supply. In 2020, they produced 21,262 terajoules of both heat and chilled water. The total is 21,262 with chilled water and air supply more than 50% of the total. They revised their energy balance in 2020, and they removed the details about district cooling. Now it's under district heat supply, but the amount is still the same. here it's 21,261, and the previous slide it's 21,262. So they just combined and didn't show the cooling data anymore. So now let me go to electricity storage. We want to collect grid electricity storage data from our member economies, and we divided this into main activity producer and auto producer. So electricity storage could be pump hydro or battery storage, and we ask for rated power capacity, storage capacity, or the amount of electricity that could be stored in these storage facilities, and the electricity that was stored, electricity used for storage, and electricity supplied to the grid for the main activity producers. And for the auto producer, we just added this, although maybe there are no auto producer with pump hydro, but we are not sure whether there are auto producer with battery storage. So we also included data collection from auto producer, and there we also want to know the amount of electricity they stored and the amount they supplied to the grid, or the amount that they consume from storage. So, and for the next one is electricity consumption of road electric vehicles. So this is our observation. In most economies, battery charging is not yet separated from electricity consumption of the sector where the electric vehicles are charged. For example, those charged in the households or in the residential and commercial sectors, the consumption is not for battery charging are not yet disaggregated, because the growth in electricity consumption in the road transport is not as fast as the growth in the number of electric vehicles. And so we introduced a methodology that can be used to estimate electricity consumption for these vehicles in the road sector. And some of our member economies also consider the use of advanced meter infrastructure or smart meters in obtaining electricity consumption of electric vehicles in the future. So this is the graph that I'm talking about. So electric vehicles are growing at an exponential rate, but the electricity consumption is not growing as fast. So we believe that our member economies are not yet able to fully quantify the amount of electricity consumed by the electric vehicles. And electric vehicles include cars, trucks, vans, and buses. And we believe that only partial data on electricity consumed are reflected in the EGDA database. So this is the methodology. Actually, this is from the presentation of Chinese Taipei. I just use it because it's similar to what we propose, but their slide looks much better than our slide. So I use this one. So electricity consumption is just the product of registered battery electric vehicles multiplied by average mileage and average electricity consumption per kilometer. So that is the methodology that we proposed. And another thing is this is not new, fugitive emissions and CO2 sequestration, but I'm presenting this because of our APEC energy ministers are discussing two new energy goals. So these are not yet agreed upon, but they are now discussing, like reducing methane emission by 50% by 2030 from 2020 levels, and increasing the share of decarbonized and carbon-free electricity to 60%. I just didn't get in what year. So when they say decarbonized and carbon-free electricity, it's not only renewables and nuclear, but also fossil-fired electricity with carbon capture and storage. So these are if these goals will be approved and we will ask to track the progress of these goals, we need the data on fugitive methane emissions from energy use. And then for the second goal, electricity generation from renewables, electricity generation from fossil fuels with carbon capture and storage. So these are the challenges that are facing us. For the data collection of 2021 data for these fugitive emissions or greenhouse gas emissions, so we use the submissions of 6 Annex 1 countries of APEC members that they submit to the UNFCCC. And there are also additional 3 economies that submit their emissions data. So for 12 economies that have no greenhouse gas emissions data, we calculate their emissions using the energy balance data. And of course, CO2 sequestration or capture and storage cannot be calculated from energy balance data. So we should rely on economies from about this data. And one of the issues two of the issues that we found when calculating fugitive emissions is that we can only do tier 1 calculation. And then we observe huge differences between tier 1 calculations and submissions to the UNFCCC and to us as well. Therefore, I think we should not calculate fugitive emissions, but we should rely on our member economy submissions. So just to, this is what we got from the UNFCCC submissions. So we can find their CO2, methane, and N2O, and other pollutants, and the emission from fuel combustion, fugitive emissions, and CO2 capture and CO2 transport and storage. So we could use this for our 6 non-Annex 1 economies. And so I asked a colleague to compare our tier 1 calculation and the submission. So we saw large discrepancies, except for the United States, which is only 11%. So based on these observations, we thought that fugitive emissions shouldn't be calculated by us using tier 1 methodology. And we should rely on what our member economies submit. So thank you. Those are our new data collection impact. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Edito. Are there any questions that people would like to raise or comments? Okay, Patrick.
Thank you very much for presentation. About electric car graph that you showed us. It is very difficult to interpret this huge numbers coming, but electric demand is not coming from the electric transportation. How do you explain it? Can you change the graph, because cars are increasing like that, but demand is like, even with the methodology, it should be going a little bit up, maybe.
That slide include actual data. So the electricity consumption is not due to a model or due to calculation, but it is submitted electricity consumption data in the road transport sector. So the growth rate of electricity demand, this blue line, electricity consumption in road transport, does not match with the growth of the electric vehicles. So we expect them to be growing at the same rate, but actual data doesn't have that. So that's why we are proposing to have a methodology to calculate. Thank you.
Yes, of course, go ahead.
I know there's possibilities of leakage in oil transport as well, but can there be leakages increasing with certain market measures? Because you are measuring this data from remote metering, isn't it? If I
The blue line here, electricity consumption on road transport, is reported data by member economies. So this is, and yeah, so I don't know about the leakage that you are saying.
I have two things that I would like to say. One is that all issues presented here are extremely valid also for Europe and European countries. The issue of correctly identifying how much electricity goes to vehicles and not to include this electricity as additional electricity, but correctly deduce it in the sectors where vehicles were charged is also a problem for European countries. The issues related to cooling, especially with introduction of renewable cooling in the Renewable Energy Directive, is also something we would need to address in our statistics. And specifically for hydrogen, I would like to thank colleagues from APEC and their research center, because we had exchanges with them when we were developing the new joint Eurostat IEA questionnaire for hydrogen, and we managed to learn a lot from each other. So the issues are very valid, and we have some cooperation ongoing between us. So yeah, I think that the issues are the same worldwide, that it's difficult to say that there are some regional issues, that the energy sector is moving the same way in all countries.
Thank you very much, Marek. Yeah, we actually benefited from our discussion on hydrogen templates. So we would like to thank IEA and Eurostat. We had 2 online meetings about this before. Thank you very much.
We're always happy to hear that. Are there any other questions or comments? Luca.
Thanks, Edito. Maybe something that I already asked you, but I will ask again because I don't remember. Regarding district cooling, the energy content of chilled water, how is it computed? And if you know if all the countries in APEC use the same methodology? Thanks.
I'll just say about 2 economies. I can say for 3 economies. So Malaysia, the district cooling companies charge their customers with refrigeration ton hour. So which could be converted to joules, or because it's an energy unit. And Hong Kong charge their customers in kilowatt hours. So they buy electricity from the grid, produce chilled water, deliver chilled water to customers, and then bill their customers in kilowatt hours. And in the data that they submit to us, the amount of electricity used to chilled water is equivalent to the amount of chilled water that they delivered. So 100% transformation there. So yeah, and Japan, their district cooling data are in joules, terajoules. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions or comments, I don't see any hands online. Then you've confused me as to what is left for Nobuhiro to discuss, according to the agenda. Hydrogen. Okay, just hydrogen's left. Okay, great. We've already been thanked for hydrogen, so that, you know, in anticipation.
So thank you, Nick. I'm Nobuhiro Samura from APEC and APARC. So I will have a report on hydrogen data collection in APEC member economies in 2023 to 2024. So there are some slides about definition of terms. So hydrogen is energy carrier, and then it doesn't typically exist by itself in nature, as you know, and then it must be produced from compounds that contain it. Then ammonia is it's basically a carrier of hydrogen, but ammonia can be fired with other materials, I mean fuels. And then the third one is the MCH, so it is mainly used as a carrier of hydrogen. Then e-fuels, so e-fuel is electric fuels, it's synthetic fuels, and then they combine of green hydrogen and CCS technology. Then in hydrogen production, there is a thermal process, so natural gas reforming, petroleum products reforming, and then coal gasification and biomass gasification and biofuel reforming. And then as another method, there's electric processes. So I will explain later, but here we have also other processes such as solar-driven processes and biological processes. And then also, this is examples of hydrogen transformation. So the first one is the hydrogen liquefaction. That is the process of liquefying hydrogen to reduce the volume by cooling it below minus 253 degree, and then the liquefied hydrogen gasification, and then hydrogen compound production, and then hydrogen reconversion. So we put these items on our new templates. So as Marek mentioned, so APEC cooperated with Eurostat and IEA about hydrogen format. So we got we have several online meetings, and then APEC made hydrogen templates by referring IEA Eurostat formats. So this is the latest format of APEC format. It's a production supply. So here there's a thermal process, and then one example is natural gas deforming. So we have here we have with CCS and then without CCS. So I will explain later. So what is the difference between with CCS and without CCS? Then we also have electric processes of the hydrogen. Then we have also other processes. Then other sources. So we adopted other sources such as from hydrogen, ammonia, e-fuels to avoid double counting on our templates. So this is about the difference between with CCS and without CCS. So according to the user manual of IEA and Eurostat, so under without CCS, so include production without CCS technology plus the part produced while not capturing carbon in installation with CCS. So as an example, for example, so 30% of production in installation with 70% capturing. So this is defined as without CCS. Then we also include here the production via CCUS. Then about with CCS, so we include the production proportionate to the part captured. It could be up to 95%. However, the CO2 created to produce the steam used in some process will probably not counted. So I skip the above note. Then this is also format of trade. So imports by source. So we have 4 items: hydrogen, ammonia, e-fuel, no, 3 items, and total. Then this is a template of exports by destination. Same as import, we have 3 items: hydrogen, ammonia, e-fuels, then total. So next one is transformation. So consumption in transformation and the energy sectors. So we have again we have 3 items: hydrogen, ammonia, e-fuels, and then the first first category is a main activity producer, such as large utility companies, and the next one is auto producers. It's large chemical and steel companies generating electricity inside their sites. Then this is total energy sector crumbs. Then we put transformation items on the blue letters. Then we then move on final consumption of the hydrogen. So here we have 2 categories. One is energy use, and then the second one is non-energy use. So we adopted this style because IEA Eurostat format adopted this format, and then we believe this is a very useful, and then this is very clear to for other members. And then here we have industry sector, transport sector, and then other sectors. Then this is a production capacity format. So the same as production template, we have thermal process with CCS, without CCS. Then electronic process and other processes and the other sources. So this is same reasons, that is to avoid double counting for of each items. Then this is hydrogen development in non-OECD APEC economies. So far we had several meetings in APEC. So we had presentations and reports at about hydrogen in the in meetings and workshop in APEC. So I would like to focus on non-OECD APEC economies situation of hydrogen. So first, Brunei Darussalam still conducting a study of green hydrogen production. Then in Brunei, ammonia is still produced from natural gas for fertilizer production. And China. So China is focusing on hydrogen development, and then its National Bureau of Statistics will collect hydrogen data and fill out templates in the future. Then Hong Kong, China would like to know which unit is used besides terajoules, and then also they would like to know what process hydrogen produced from town gas is categorized. Then we share that hydrogen produced from town gas may be regarded as other sources. Then in Indonesia, there's no hydrogen production and consumption data but however, hydrogen is considered as a new energy. Then Papua New Guinea not looking into hydrogen and ammonia yet, but they believe it's gonna be useful in the future. Next, Peru. Some mining companies are developing pilot for electric vehicles. And then Peru included hydrogen in its EBT format. Then the Philippines believes hydrogen, ammonia, and fuel have the potential to achieve its target of energy security. And then DOE of the Philippines established the fuel cell research testing facility. The issue is the lack of infrastructure. So I move on the other economies situation. So Singapore shared that hydrogen data collection strategy is in place in anticipation of large amount of hydrogen in the future. Then Chinese Taipei is concerned with the division of hydrogen production into non-energy and energy used for energy statistics. So we are having a TTSEC meeting almost every month, and then we will talk to Chinese Taipei about this item. Then the Taiwan, the target year for the commercial usage of hydrogen is 2030. So it is still in the stage of pilot to produce electricity. So ammonia is still for fertilizers now. Then finally, Vietnam. So no e-fuel right now in Vietnam. The ammonia is used to produce fertilizers. So in the future, Vietnam expects hydrogen will have potential for energy use. Then this is my final slide. So about hydrogen data collection, so we collect data at the same time as the other 5 annual energy questionnaires, and then energy prices and CO2 emission. Then all questionnaires will be sent to a focal point before end of December 2023, and its deadline for submission would be March 31st, 2024. Then about data processing. So now hydrogen used in oil refining is reported under other hydrocarbons, which is a primary product. The consumption of hydrogen is currently reported under other sources. So we continue the same approach until an energy product called hydrogen is added in the standard International Energy Classification SEC of UNSD. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nobuhiro. Are there any questions or comments that people would like to raise? Obviously, this is the outcome of a number of years' work that all of us have been engaged in. Very good. Hayden, please.
Thanks for the presentation. On one of the slides, and maybe you've already discussed it with my colleagues, but there's on the consumption slide in the questionnaire, there was consumption and then other sources. Could you explain what that was? And I had a second question. One of the countries was mentioned that the IEA had was concerned about how the e-fuels are produced, but not what they're composed of. Was that just a breakdown into the different categories of the types of fuels?
Yeah, so this is now we reviewed here. So this is not correct location. So after this meeting, so we move to the accurate place. And sorry, can you repeat your second question? So we have to continue to talk in detail. So this we put e-fuel here, but the detailed definitions is not decided yet. So we will bring it back to APEC and then talk to our members.
Yeah, there are many kinds of e-fuels, including e-methane, right? So, but I think for this one, we are only concerned with we are concerned with all the e-fuels, maybe including e-methane. So, thank you. Eric?
This is actually a very interesting question on the composition of e-fuels. Okay, we need to know how different fuels are used and for what purpose. In this case, we are mostly talking about electricity. By definition of the e-fuels, we kind of know that they are not fossil fuels and that the molecule of carbon is likely coming from atmosphere. So for CO2 emission accounting, we can kind of assume that all e-fuels are carbon neutrals because the carbon was already counted elsewhere or taken from atmosphere. So from that perspective, their composition doesn't matter because they don't influence greenhouse gas emissions. However, when it comes to counting air pollution, where of course the composition of the fuels matters, then it gets more trickier because we would not be helping in that respect. However, as far as I know, the energy statistic is not helping the air pollution anyway, because it's more the technology of the combustion than the composition of the fuel that is affecting it. So, okay, the question is very valid, but because we have so little e-fuels, I don't think there would be much of an appetite on the side of countries to have a further disaggregation at this stage. But it's a very good point that we have to remember for our future methodological developments.
Over, I think that we'll be coming back to these points very shortly. Yeah. Yes, very good. Sorry, of course, Maurice.
Thank you for the interesting presentation. There's one thing we do not know, and we are trying to do in Turkey is blending of hydrogen into natural gas grid. So I checked it again, but how can be reported in this kind of format?
For the benefit of those virtually shaking your head.
So far, we have read, we don't have such a format.
For blending hydrogen in natural gas grid, the joint Eurostat IEA questionnaires that we are now developing in the background for a reference year 2024, when the hydrogen questionnaire will be introduced, we are introducing also flows of hydrogen blended in natural gas grid in the hydrogen questionnaire. And in table 1 of the natural gas questionnaires, under other sources, hydrogen will be added. So in the natural gas questionnaire, it would be possible to monitor how much hydrogen was injected in the natural gas grid.
Okay, Reinhard?
Yeah.
Last time we had the benefit of seeing your face, not this time?
Not, you see mine now?
Brilliant.
Ah, good. Yes, thank you for this presentation. It's very nice that we succeeded in developing this hydrogen questionnaire in a global, from a global perspective. So we're very glad with that, especially in Europe, because there's always very tense direction to do things, everything in the framework of all the directives. But this is really something global, so we are very happy with it. With this, one thing which was not really addressed is the definition of hydrogen. It's good to have a harmonized questionnaire, but especially for hydrogen, the definition can also be quite crucial, especially how to treat hydrogen in mixtures. I think in the IEA and Eurostat also have guidelines, which are very well worked out, and there is definition that it's only included when it's 98% of purity. So I'm wondering whether in APAC is using a similar definition of hydrogen.
That's a very helpful question.
What's the question for us? Or
the question is the threshold value, the purity of the hydrogen that you are including in your questionnaire, the guidance that you're giving.
it's I think it's the same as IEA and Eurostat, 98% purity.
Very good.
Ah, great.
Okay, I don't see any other hands online or flags being raised here. And so if I might, I'll turn to you, Renee.
Okay, so thank you. So I'm René Baudouin. I'm the Assistant Director of the Canadian Center for Energy and Transportation Statistics. And I want to thank the IEA for welcoming us today at this meeting. I'm pleased to present on the recent development at StatScan, in particular for our expanded renewable fuel and hydrogen survey. But at first, I will use the opportunity to provide the ESG member with a brief overview of the most recent development of the CCI, the Canadian Centre of Energy Information, including some functionalities and new tools that we have. So to confuse people for the agenda there, the items that are listed are reversed. I decided to, don't blame the agenda maker, blame me. I decided when I prepared the deck to start from the bigger picture and drill down to the hydrogen survey. Well, I'm going to stop in between to give you a bit more context on the Canadian context, provide you some trends as well. So what about the Canadian Centre of Energy Information? So it's a partnership with Natural Resources Canada, Environment Climate Change Canada, and the Canadian Energy Regulator, and it's delivered by Statistics Canada. The Energy Stats program is a piece of it, a piece of the puzzle of it, StatsCan, where we publish this data and insight on energy supply, demand, so the whole balance. We have a monthly data we collect that we report to the IEA through Simon and Arcan here. So that's one piece of the puzzle. And I think the next slide shows a better way to show that puzzle to me. I find it's a better way to explain it. So I was starting about the top right corner. StatsCan, we're one piece of the puzzle. We're the primary collector, compiler, and distributor of energy data, where we collect that. I find it cool counterclockwise. On the top left, we have Natural Resources Canada, who has its own mandate and responsibilities. They're the one that have a mandate to report to the IEA, but they are looking into detailed data, like or in terms of the management of natural resources in the country. And if there's more questions, specific question on that, my colleague here working from Natural Resources. Then the bottom left, counterclockwise, Environment and Climate Change Canada produces information regarding the impact of environmental regulation, and they calculate the GHG emission using our energy balance that we provide them from StatsCan. The NIR report, the National Inventory Report, comes from the Environment Climate Change Canada. And bottom right corner, the Canadian Energy Regulator collects, monitor, and analyze and publish information on energy markets and supply, takes care of safety and security of the pipelines and international power lines. And it also produces energy supply and demand projection. So it looks like a complex puzzle, and it is for users, or it was. I think it's becoming less and less. And this is why the box on top, the CCEI, the Canadian Centre of Energy Information, was created in 2020. So it's to avoid. So why create this? It's mainly to have the one-stop shop, avoid duplication, harmonize, bring the occurrence into coherence, and improve the information for Canadian, make it more accessible and user-friendly. So what is it at the end? It's a virtual center. So we don't have what we call in this, they're always referred to or compared to the EIA, the Energy Administration in the US. We don't have that in Canada. We want that. It's true, we don't have that. What we have is a virtual center, which is this is composed of the collaboration of the 4 partners that I previously explained, and it's StatsCan that delivers the center, the virtual center. We moving ahead with a few years. I said it was launched 2020. I'm not going to go through all the listed deliverables and things that we have here. We getting into an integrated work plan, and where we have combined deliverables that we work together for. And more now, we as when we developed originally the CCI website, we had most of the content was from Statistics Canada, and we had an inventory of all the product from our partners, our 3 partners. Now we making things more integrated. So if I focus on the last 4 items at the top of the bottom right of the slide, we just for the first time released the energy fact books from NRCan, from Natural Resources Canada, exclusively on the CCI website, because there was still a challenge where information was published everywhere else. So now for the first time it's been published last October in the CCI. I'm going to jump the next one because I'm going to maybe do a little demo. The next 2 interesting one coming up is the energy efficiency and production pages on the website. So I already mentioned that the Environment Climate Change Canada does the GHG projection. We have the CER, the Canadian Energy Regulator, that does the energy projection. They've done release Energy Future 20 to 2050, where they do net zero projection. So we'll have that integrated into the CCI website. We'll have a third link to that where we contact with and we're partnering with all the what we call the energy modeling hubs, so all the modeling community in the country, our researchers, academics that are doing models and various models about electrification and the energy transition. So we're going to link all that those people through the CCI. We want the users to be discussing result and of model in terms of what needs to be done for energy transition, but not what data did you use, and you use the same data to start with. Or so ideally, the one-stop shop of data leads to better, stronger model that people don't argue over the data sources, but they can argue about the model behind it or the strategy or the hypothesis is taken. So this is the next page coming. We also are working on having more frequency electricity data that's coming up, coming soon on the website. And the fourth item, or the second on the list on the right, was the SDMX.stat data explorer. So we talked about SDMX this morning. So we are jumping on that too on our on the CCI, and we using a tool that's being developed now, the Explorer. So I was trying to see if I could take a few minutes to share. I have connection issue, but I have a way to fix it for 2 minutes. I can speak very fast if I enable the firewall for 2 minutes and I connect. I can show you a little bit what it looks like because it's not launched yet. Let me try to share my screen. If I can hear. How does it work? Does it work? I thought I shared my screen. Did share? It doesn't let me share. What I was going to show you, what I was going to show you that I can see here, basically, it's a tool that we want to put online on the website because. Oh, did I lose my? Did I sharing now? No. I'll stop sharing. Can I stop sharing? Or you can take over. I'm not going to show it. It's too bad, but unfortunately, it's really a tool that displays the data that we've done some of the work to harmonize and codified into SDMX format. So the users can visualize it at a data table as there's pre-built graphs. They can customize the layout. Big thing is that they can share the data. It's API enabled, so you can use it with an API to read it. We want to use it as a data ingestion tool as well. So you have the idea of the common metadata behind it is also very important as we bring the data from our partners, even our federal partners or external partners. Like I said, originally the CCEI was mainly composed of Statistics Canada data. That's easy, it's in-house, we can easily have access to it, but the other data was linked to it, bringing us to the data. In this case, we can ingest it and share it in the same manner that the other data source are shared. Same way of metadata, of coding, same way of sharing. So this is an important part, and this is going to be launched. Like I was asked even on the way here, what time are you presenting? Because I think we're launching this week. Is it 8 a.m. and 6 hours? And so it's yes, I will share.
We'll find a slot tomorrow.
Yeah, right now in the slide, I don't know if you've shared the slide. If you can move to the next one. I was talking about the tool. So the next one has the link, and right now there's many links, and it's because depending on which one was going to be in production, which one was going to work. So one of these should work for you. But I'll make sure I'll send that slide with the correct slide, the correct link when we know the final one. So it was a tool. Then I said I was going to provide a bit more context about the Canadian context before diving into the new renewable fuel survey or the expanded one. So just to show the importance of the energy industry in Canada. So it's about 8% of the GDP right now as it stands. It went up all the way up to 10% last year. We have some more numbers in terms of employment. You see that that sector was impacted by the pandemic or the restriction of in 2020, Q2 2020, where it was the lowest, 260,000 jobs. We're back now to pretty much the level of pre-pandemic, to almost 300,000 jobs in energy domain. Our trade balance in Canada, if you're interested, we're more exporter than importer, except for RPPs. But this is what it looked like in the last few quarters. Then going a little bit more precise onto our energy stats. So this is from our RPP data. So you can see the kerosene type jet fuel supply that went way down when travel was restricted, and we had to join you here on Zoom from Canada. So that little peak at the bottom, that's when I joined the meeting here. And now that Simon and I are here, the jet fuel production has taken again, it hasn't reached the pre-pandemic level, but it has enough to fly us here both this year. So, and then more specific here, we're looking into the some of the renewable data that we have now on fuel ethanol. We also have some data on ethanol, biodiesel as well. So just to show that since there's a bit of a trend up in the recent quarters in terms of net input in this position, and it's, if I look at the next slide, the import, it's pretty much the same kind of trend. So the production of ethanol hasn't really picked up. That's what it means in Canada, but we've imported more. And business had to, because we have a new regulation that came into effect where we have to increase the percentage of ethanol in our fuels starting into July even. So that's why we see that it's starting to pick up the ethanol import and consumption. That's going to increase. That's already closing my context, and it's a very short presentation on the monthly renewable fuel survey. But some details in there. I'll talk about the current monthly renewable fuel survey. So we have one now that's, I'm going to look my notes. I don't want to forget some of the detail. Already mentioned that we, yes, so we're launched in 2020. The current surveys have a sample of about just 20 liquid biofuel producers. Like I said, it's already collect data on ethanol, biodiesel, or FAME, and renewable diesel. The categories that are currently published are right now renewable, or ethanol and renewable fuel, except ethanol. The existing variable are opening and closing inventories, receipt, input, production, shipment, and losses and adjustments. So this is what we have now. We know that it's not enough with what we're trying to track. So we will now improve the scope and representation of our low carbon fuel. We expanding this as of the reference period of January 2024. So we don't have that data yet. The survey expansion was necessary to capture the new fuels. We called it activity-based because most of the units that we are collecting for, and honestly, in the energy industry, they're landfill and wastewater plant, and those people, those kind of businesses, and our samples going up quite a bit from 20 unit to 250 unit. I was saying I shouldn't say sample. It's a survey population. So every unit known that would be. That's right. That's what we're targeting now. So we've done some testing over the last year. So we're ready to start and get rolling on the new survey. These are the new product that we are after. So as I said, we already have ethanol, biodiesel, and renewable diesel. So now we added biocrude and bio oil. Since we have noted that some Canadian refineries already begun integrating those crude oil alternatives into their operation. What we call alternative aviation fuel goes by the name of sustainable aviation fuel. Along with asking volumetric information on biogas, we're also asking producers the temperature and pressure in which their measurements are made, with the goal of standardizing measurements in order to be able to release aggregate statistics. We split biogas into two types, landfill and anaerobic digester due to the unique process under which each of these types of biogas are produced. For example, the feedstock used to produce anaerobic digester biogas are much easier to identify versus the landfill biogas. In Canada, biogas is being upgraded to renewable natural gas and then injected into a natural gas pipeline system. Other gaseous, how do you say that in English? Gaseous renewable fuel. We included other as well because just to catch other things that might emerge for now that we want to maybe expand later on, but right now we're going with this. The questionnaire will focus only on low carbon hydrogen production and will not survey traditional hydrogen producers, but we already have hydrogen data from our refineries that we're already getting on another survey. So this is really to target the low hydrogen production. So we add the category of low carbon hydrogen produced from other methods also at the end to compensate. So we group them in those 4 methods. So low carbon hydrogen produced from steam methane, reforming with carbon capture, or produced using electrolysis, or produced using biomass. And then we have the other as well. And the only solid biofuels that we have is that we added to the survey was wood pellets. There's a lot of that happening in the country. And I only have one more slide, and it's on the new variables. So on top of all the variables I listed earlier, we also now add expanding. The first part maybe is more for having a more disaggregate picture nationally for all our 10 provinces and territories. So we're breaking out that shipment and receipt to include the province and territory that the respondent shipped to and from. There's a lot of information requirement internally to find out where the movements are, the flows are going, and also Canada. We also identify domestic versus foreign feedstock. We also add the variable fuel use, so the own consumption, capacity, hiding values, and the measurement of temperature, like I mentioned earlier. And that's really all there was. Went very quickly, but I think I covered it all. So if there's any questions, my colleague is here. I mean, we're both here.
Great. Well, thanks very much. I had one question related to the last slide. So you say able to choose outside of Canada, but you have the bilateral. You just know outside of Canada.
I'd love to double check that because we normally ask the country. A lot of us will be US in our case.
Yes,
you're right. I'll have to double check how we coded that one.
Okay.
Because we've been discussing that internally. Good question. I have to double check. I don't have time to hear, but with my access issue.
Great. I see Giovanni has his hand raised.
Thank you so much, Nick. To see you, all colleague. I have a little question to our colleague of Canada on the nomenclature of this type of new products for renewable, because it seems that we have a different terminology on the name of these products. We have, for example, biomethane, where you have a renewable gas. We have a different type of biodiesel. For example, HVO is hydrotreated vegetable oil that you don't have. Seems that we need more standardization in the type of these new products that we have to collect, and it's very, very important to have this nomenclature shared and all together decided, and all together it would be better if we all together use the same name for the same products. Otherwise, the statistics is very difficult to compare, to make cross-country analysis. And so this is one part of the activity of IED that could help us a lot if we can reach this goal of have the same name for the same products all together in the world. Thanks a lot.
have to agree, for sure. We all for that. We have a working group right now under we call them under Standards Canada, but with the Canadian Centre of Energy Information that are going product by product right now, reviewing all the terms used for the same thing or for different things sometimes, because a lot of when we try to reconcile, we had that vision of reconciling the various data sources where we found incurrences, and we realized that, well, maybe the data wasn't incurrent. We're just talking different languages, so we not have the same definition for what we call the same thing. So we are at reviewing that internally, but even we are always comparing to what's available internationally for sure. The IEA, I mean, Simon, I don't know if you want to add to this, but I know when we've designed this survey, we definitely did our homework in terms of choosing our terms. So
the design of the survey involved NRCan, also Environment Climate Change Canada, and so various perspectives were coming to the table. And so in terms of terminology, René mentioned that we're using, for example, alternative aviation fuel. I think, I'm not sure where that suggestion came from, but there are some considerations, in terms of choosing the right word and stuff. But at those scoping discussions for the expansion of the survey, I was there and I had my, my guides, my IEA method of my guide and the SIUC, trying to make sure that ultimately there was some alignment. Another point to make is that the terms that were identified on the slide actually might be kind of like more aggregate roll-ups, and then the survey collection might actually be more detailed. But with the number of respondents that we have in Canada and stuff, we all often take the approach of aggregating upwards. But I do believe that the microdata will be a bit more detailed than those major categories that were listed there.
Okay. Now that you mentioned this, this is something that we'll be able to share as well, the actual questionnaire detail, see the terms, and to have the detail behind the higher level of the slides. Yes.
Nicholas?
Impressive presentation. We always from Sweden look on your statistics system in Canada, and that's kind of a platform with a lot of authorities collaborate is something we need to have in Sweden in our statistical system of 30 authorities that are responsible in statistical domains. Statistics Sweden are trying to do the best to get the collaboration, but there are one area, climate, that are not function as we others. Second is actually answer to Giovanni. I think the standardizer of international energy and commodities are actually wanted to make classification that everyone use. And that work with UNSD as a response in the group with Eurostat and others. We try to do this, but it's going to be a struggle because I think definitions there is going to change the iris, and that is going to change everything. So everything is going to be updated. But I think that's the main issue and purpose of that task force. Thank you.
Well, we've invited Vincent Russo, chair, of course, of the SEIAC revision, to present tomorrow. But I think, and we had the interesting discussion on code lists this morning. Now we're getting to sort of the fundamentals of what lies behind the code lists and the definitions. And not all of it is going to be in the SEIAC classification. Much of it will be in the IRIS revision to the IRIS, which will be completed by the time I retire. But obviously, this is extremely important. And I guess at least at the outset, just so that we're clear, it behooves all of us to be very transparent, even if we differ, to be transparent about what we are in fact including in these different areas and cases where we can harmonize. And of course, that's very valuable, as we saw in the case of hydrogen and the application of the same threshold values. So, but poor Vincent who's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, will be presenting on the SEIAC revision tomorrow, and I think we'll have an interesting discussion there. Are there any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Stefan.
Thanks. No, only on this biofuel thing, we are exploring in the short-term team this, because for our needs, but also for energy security needs, maybe we will request more information on biofuel. So we can work with Eurostat and EPEC to have something more standardized in terms of definition well, it's only something we are exploring now. It's really in the pipe, but to know also if the countries, and that's why we launched a survey some time ago, the availability of this data on a monthly basis, really detailed data for the new biofuel thing. So in the next year, we will initiate that.
And it may well be coming sooner rather than later, if I understand well. No further questions? Okay, and nothing online? Well, then we can move to the final agenda item for today. I'm just looking at the order for it. So it's on the emergency response and energy security, starting off with Stev, and then we'll have 2 virtual interventions from the UK and Netherlands subsequently. Stev.
Yes, thanks. So we are 30 minutes late, so I think I will be very short. So I'm going to present a few slides more as an introduction and recap of the emergency data reporting before the country presentation from UK and Netherlands. Maybe I can share if you. Yeah, next slide. I don't have the. It's only It's only. Thanks. So no, only one. The first slide is really remind one important things when we talk about the role of data in case of crisis. We need to rely on a robust, regular system to really know the situation, to have all the elements the most accurate possible. And if we need early data or some additional data, we put in place an emergency data collection. So last year, following the invasion of Ukraine, it was decided by the IEA member to launch a collective action. So in parallel, we initiated emergency data collection reporting. So for that, we added the QE, this emergency questionnaire in the EVO platform, within the EVO platform. All the IEA member countries participated. The main object, so we add for this QE early deadlines, more N-1, even tighter for the we will see that with the next slide. On your side, it may involve other entities and other channels. So it's a good and bad thing. It's good because you can identify maybe some issues in the transmission of information. Also, we insisted with this QE to get obligated industry stocks. As you know, in the MOS questionnaire, we have a category in the stocks table only for all industry stocks. So we would like to have more information on that. That's why we added this flow. And it's really important to have some feedback from you, from the countries, the administration, for next exercise or real emergency data reporting. So here it's only a recap of all because the requirements change since the beginning of the QE. So the 2 first periods, we were asking for really almost a full balance, stocks, trade information, some information on the estimation behind the data you don't cover at 100%. And the deadline were really tight. In May, June, it was really almost less than 20 days after the reference month. So really demanding for you, I suppose. So we would like to thank you all the countries and all of you because it was demanding. since July last year, the deadline was in line with the MOS1, but on M-1 basis, so 25 days, and it was only on balance and stocks with no obligation to provide the estimate files. So now we wanted to give you with all the data we collected during this period. So it was from February 2022 to April. So we are finalizing with Daniel, just close to me, an assessment report for country by country. So it will be shared with all of you in the coming weeks and the SAQ delegates. The purpose is really to assess the quality of the data submitted for more than 1 year. So it will contain a data explorer with the deviation, mainly based on the deviation between QE data and MOS data. So you will be able to see by flow and by product where the deviation are bigger. And we will have also an assessment including several indicators, so timeliness, completeness, consistency, and accuracy, mainly based on the deviation with MOS again. So we hope that will help you to identify some potential issue and to improve M-1 data. So that's it from our side. I think we can maybe now go with the presentation from UK or Netherlands, UK. Nathalie, no? We
Hello,
cannot hear.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello,
Good
sorry,
afternoon,
I was
Nathalie.
finding the button. Good afternoon, how are you? Thank you for that, that was really interesting. I'm gonna try and share my screen just now. Okay, you see the presentation?
Yeah, if you can. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So first up, thank you for having me to speak at today's session. I'm Natalie. I head the oil statistics team in the UK. We run monthly surveys of industry to report on refinery activity, oil trade demand and stocks to the IEA via the MOS and AOQ, which is monthly and annual data. We also publish this data in headline format in monthly, in Energy Trends, and more detail quarterly and annually, which is our digestive UK energy statistics. So the stock release, as you know, was the first in 10 years, and all of the team in the UK here were new to the process of doing a real release rather than an exercise. The high pressure, fast paced delivery definitely got the adrenaline flowing, I'll say that. So I'm going to talk to you today about our experience of releasing the stocks and submitting data to as high quality as possible over the following months. So I just need to start this presentation by saying I was only present at the very start of the March and April stock releases, and then I was seconded to another team to help cover oil resilience. Zoe and my team stepped up to cover my absence and did an amazing job of it. The work I'm about to describe is entirely her effort. She's here today in case you have any questions that I'm not able to answer. So here at home, the UK participation did make it into the news, if only briefly, but clearly the participation was important and a lot of work went into making sure it ran smoothly and that data collected throughout the exercise was accurate so we could monitor supply properly. And I know that many of you will be familiar with the general timeline shown here. I just wanted to demonstrate how Zoe and her team responded so well to each stage in such a timely manner. They reacted quickly, communicated clearly with industry, and supported multiple policy teams extensively through the entire process, alongside challenges that were faced along the way that we'll get onto later. So they did all of this work while they were also meeting the demands of business as usual. And this included surveying around 50 companies on a monthly basis to obtain the data. They continued to publish our data on a monthly basis, delivered our annual Jukes publication on time and to a high standard. They ensured the sanctions that the UK placed on Russian oil to the UK were well supported with analytical evidence. In this time, Zoe also saw staff vacancies, which were not filled until much later in the year. She was delighted when new starters came. And these are typical pressures for many teams, but really it was a crunch time. So just a little bit of background on the UK's oil stocking system. In case you weren't aware, the UK meets its obligation to hold emergency oil reserves by entirely directing industry to hold stocks on behalf of government. We do this based on company market shares. We collect data monthly, so we both have the data to set directions and to monitor stock levels. So this makes engagement crucial to ensure successful operation of the system day to day and for cooperation during a release. Now, following the IEA announcement of coordinated action, we communicated early and extensively with industry. This is the royal we. This was Zoe and her team. We emailed the day after the announcement to confirm the UK was taking part. This followed a submission to ministers and obtaining agreement from them. We arranged a meeting at the trade association offices, and every obligated company was invited to attend in person or remotely. Insights from meetings like this really help us better understand the issues and challenges they're facing. We think that meeting face-to-face, whether in person or remotely, helps foster a stronger relationship with more open communication, and it's a keystone of the work that we do. So during the release, members of our team were constantly in contact with companies, resolving and approving ticket queries and cancellations, following up on the monthly reporting to ensure data quality if we spotted issues so that we were providing the most accurate data possible, and also helping companies meet the earlier deadlines for accelerated reporting. And industry were amazing. They responded really well. To ensure stocks were available, we saw that usually companies cancelled ticketed stock, whether held domestically or abroad, and we saw a shuffling of obligated stocks to commercial so it would be available to market. They met deadlines for early reporting, particularly early on when the situation was most urgent. So this was fine for our mid and downstream oil data, but we get data on offshore production, trade and stocks via the North Sea Transition Authority. These people oversee licensing in the North Sea, and reporting to them each month is a condition of the licensing. So this means that we in the department don't have direct communication with the sector, and it can bring complications. So for instance, the usual deadline for offshore reporting is the 25th of each month. As anybody who does a MOS knows, the IEA deadline is the 25th of each month. During the accelerated reporting, it was a day or a few days earlier. The thing with the 25th of the month is that it means that the operators usually send their data in on the 25th. So we have partial coverage, and it requires some estimation, usually, for M-1, so just month end, just finished reporting. We engaged with the North Sea Transition Authority to request a deadline was brought forward. They were really helpful. They emailed industry and passed on our request. And this was highly successful for a month or two. Well, you can guess if the earlier offshore collection was successful for a month or two, then it was not quite so successful later on. Operators ended up returning to the usual deadline because we didn't have the direct contact. We couldn't communicate the sense of urgency directly to them, hence the red panic button. This meant our reporting of crude oil and natural gas liquid production, stocks and trade became more estimated at the point of submission later in the reporting cycle. And another aspect is data we collect from customs here in the UK. It's based on duty paid, and we use this data to complete our reporting of oil imports and exports, and we benchmark our estimates for road fuel usage each month. This data is not available on time for early reporting, meaning that we had to estimate it. On the usual timelines, that's not a problem. But trade patterns were changing because companies had already started self-sanctioning way before the ban came into effect in December. And actually, as an aside on that, on gas, an interesting fact about self-sanctioning was one company had ordered a tanker of liquefied natural gas from Russia, but when it arrived, the terminal workers refused to unload it, and it had to be diverted elsewhere. So there were quite some challenges we were facing in getting the data straight in this unusual set of circumstances. But now I just want to consider some of the data reporting challenges that we faced. So one of the issues that was the most time consuming is the origin of imports. You can see from this map here that actually quite a lot of oil used to come from Russia, and actually predominantly it was road diesel. So our monthly surveys ask companies usually for the country of origin, but following the aftermath of the invasion, we realized that some were reporting where the cargo had actually last been shipped from, or could have been. So this required a change to the reporting template, which also involved a lot of consultation with lawyers and Treasury who are leading the sanctions policy to identify the correct definition for rules of origin, which we adapted. So this is of key importance to policy colleagues to ensure sanctions are being obeyed. It just also took a lot of time to change our data collection system and our processing systems, which are newly transferred to Python and SQL. So we've all been upskilling rapidly. And we had to communicate with companies extensively to ensure they had access to correct data to follow the new guidance. So as Steph mentioned, another aspect was the use of the QUE template. This, I think, really did affect the accuracy of our reporting. So we'd moved to the usual MOS template in December 22, and we think this helped us report more accurately. It was certainly easier for us to understand the data flows. And in future, I think if there was an emergency exercise or another release, we would opt for early MOS reporting instead of it's generous because it's got more limited scope, but the alternative format means that adjusting the flows of reporting under pressure inevitably does lead to mistakes. But an interesting observation I have is following the initial IEA assessment we've received, which compares our emergency reporting data to our MOS on an M-2 basis, we noticed an interesting outcome. It seems that our accuracy dropped off over time. So we can attribute that to a few factors. Firstly, companies struggled to maintain meeting the early deadlines for emergency reporting. And once the initial pressure of the first few months was off, some companies started to submit data later than we would have preferred, which resulted in some additional estimation at the point of the early submissions. And it's also possible it wasn't really the initial reporting that changed in quality despite the additional estimation. The team got into an amazing rhythm of collecting and running the data on a speedier timetable as the months passed. And we think that as they got used to the pressures involved, they got better at ensuring the quality of the MOS M-2 data submitted a month later was of higher quality. And of course, if our capacity to follow up the data and resolve issues in it and increase the quality means it's more likely that the later reported M-2 data will differ from the initial data. And one final point on data quality, the peak of our poorest data quality, we think, came from a period where the team were carrying staff vacancies, including the grade 7, which is me. We also had much higher than usual inquiries to respond to, and policy asked for a lot of additional support to ensure decision-making was underpinned with quality analysis, not least including the work to support the development of sanctions against Russia as the UK government evolved its response to the invasion of Ukraine. So ultimately, I am sure that every participant in the release and in life generally can relate to the fact that a lot of work underlies the resulting numbers we report to the IEA. Thank you for listening. And are there any questions?
Thank you very much. That last slide makes me feel extraordinarily guilty.
How do I end the slideshow? There we go.
Are you available tomorrow, Natalie, at 11 o'clock?
Let me check my diary.
And Sander, we've been trying to reach you. Are you available tomorrow at 11 a.m.?
Hi,
Yes.
just reading the notes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, yes, that would be possible.
Okay, thank you very much. There's been a meeting unexpectedly. They need to take over this room and need to set up before. And so unfortunately, we're going to have to push this agenda item till tomorrow morning. I promise I will not tell so many bad jokes or ask so many questions myself tomorrow so that we can get through the agenda in time for people to get on trains, etc. If there are any quick questions for Natalie, and I emphasize she will be available tomorrow, but if there's any quick questions, please raise them now. If not, I think we'll have to close today's meeting. For those of you who are joining us for dinner tonight, I have the address. What is the address? 20 or 29 Boulevard Grenelle? Yes, so it's about 200 meters from here. It's called the Comptoir Principal, and it's 20, I've got it on my agenda, most importantly, just wrote it down, 29 Boulevard de Grenelle. So the road, the street with the above ground metro that you see, and it's just in fact 250 meters from here. Okay, at 8 p.m. Great. Okay, thanks to everybody, and my apologies for the mix-up with respect to this agenda item. My informality doesn't always treat me well. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thank you, Natalie and Sander, most particularly.